Chapter 16:12. That was true. With Noah's current reputation and strength, if he inherited White Yiksha's position and became the ruler of the hierarchy, not only would the people in the East District not object, but they would also raise both hands in approval. The ruler of the hierarchy was the guardian of order, although they had some rights. The main purpose of the ruler of the hierarchy was to maintain order and protect the safety of the residents of the box court. If they were faced with a disaster that endangered the box court, the ruler of the hierarchy would have to step forward bravely. Under such circumstances, Noah's position as the leader of the succession hierarchy would definitely be welcomed. After all, no one would want to be protected by someone who was too weak. As for Noah, not only was his reputation at its peak, but he was also a great hero who had suppressed 3 digits of humans in the final trial. He was an existence who could seal 1,000,000 gods and slaughter hundreds of gods. With such a person protecting them, why would the East District worry about not being safe? Therefore, no one would object to Noah inheriting the position of ruler of the East District. As for those who deliberately caused trouble, which brainless person would find fault with someone who had slaughtered hundreds of gods? Moreover, as the predecessor, I only held more than half of the 14 sons, but you held all 24 sons. This fact will give others the feeling that you're better than me. There will definitely be no problem for you to inherit my position. As he said this, Bayasha smiled helplessly. Not to mention that you are better than me. That's not a feeling, but a fact. Regardless of the sovereignty of all 24 sons, Noah is a person who even holds the another cosmology, which is more than 3 digits above the Hakoni. Moreover, there was more than one, another cosmology. You have the another cosmology that you inherited from the Starseed Dragon King and the 3-headed demonic dragon. Even if I were to face those two another cosmology, I wouldn't have any chance of winning. White Yiksha openly admitted. Just based on this point, you can proudly sit in the position of the ruler of the East District. The virtual star Taisue's simulated star map, another cosmology, could unconditionally seal the strongest kind of gods and star spirits. To the White Yiksha, who was the sun star spirit, this another cosmology was like a natural enemy that he could not compete with. Avesta's another cosmology could imitate the cosmology of humans and fire worship sect. It could obtain all the abilities of the individual with the cosmology, and it could also turn it into a mirror to counteract the power of the cosmology. Against this, another cosmology, White Yiksha was just nourishment. While it made the enemy stronger than him, it also made his power completely ineffective. He had no chance of winning at all. With these two, another cosmology, Noah really couldn't find an opponent in the box. Other than humans and fire worship sex gods, it was impossible for anyone to defeat Noah. Even when facing the fire worship sex gods, Noah could use another cosmology to weaken the other party's spiritual lattice or even seal it directly. In addition, Noah's power was comparable to that of a Lord God. Which human or god whose spiritual lattice was halved could defeat him. Not to mention, if Noah went all out and disregarded the burden on his body, he could even use the power of 4 incarnations at the same time for a certain period of time to reach a 2-digit level. In this way, who could be Noah's opponent? White Yiksha could not. Halloween Queen could not either. Except for the illusory 1-digit number that even its existence could not be confirmed, Noah already had the ability to truly dominate in the box court. As a ruler of the hierarchy, there was no more suitable existence than Noah. If Noah became the ruler of the hierarchy, then there was no reason for the community of the ruler of the hierarchy to only stay in the 6-digit number, right? At that time, no name, where Noah was, would be allowed to be promoted to a 5-digit number. It was not impossible to succeed. This is indeed an opportunity. 16th Night spread his hands and said to Noah very casually, "Little brother, I think you can consider it. Please." White Yiksha made a very sincere request. Sarah in the Southern District has just become the leader of the upper echelons, so there are many things that she can't do at the same time. Sandra in the Northern District is still too young and immature. Also, they're only in the 5 digits. It's fine for them to face some small disasters, but it's too dangerous for them to face a big disaster like this, or a situation like last time where several districts were attacked at the same time. In view of this, among the rulers of the hierarchy, there must be someone who can pick up the big picture at a critical time and has powerful abilities, White Yiksha said to Noah solemnly. Although there are still some candidates for such a person, among them, the most suitable is undoubtedly you. If you inherit my position, then I can really rest assured. Noah understood what White Yiksha meant. In fact, White Yiksha did not know that the Avesta that Noah inherited from Az Dakaha was more or less different for what she knew. To be precise, it should be said that because the person using it was different, the target of this Avesta was a little different. If Az Dakaha were to use Avesta, he could imitate all universes except for the human and Zoroastrianism universes. However, if Noah used Avesta, other than humans, he could even imitate the fire worship sect cosmology. The reason was because Avesta, another cosmology, was special. This simulated star map, another cosmology, contained the fire worship sect's dualism of good and evil. As the evil god of the fire worship sect, when Az Dakaha used Avesta, it would be classified as the evil god of good and evil. Therefore, he would use it. In the fire worship sect's teachings, evil existed to show the existence of good. Naturally, as an evil god who was suppressed by good, when Az Dakaha was positioned as evil, he was destined to be unable to imitate the fire worship sect's cosmology. However, Noah was different. When Noah used Avesta, he was positioned as the good side. The good camp suppressing the evil camp was a very important part of the fire worship sect's mythology. For example, Welslana was an evil god who had suppressed countless evil camps. He was an undefeated military god. Therefore, when Noah was positioned as the good side, when he used Avesta, he could imitate the fire worship sect's cosmology. In other words, only the human cosmology was not within the scope of this another cosmology. Without relying on illusory star tai sway, Noah was almost invincible just by relying on Avesta. There was no reason why Noah could not be the leader of the hierarchy. However, Noah did not really want to inherit the position of the leader of the hierarchy. This was because Noah could not stay in this world forever. Now that Az Dakaha had been suppressed, Noah was ready to leave this world. Noah felt that there were some things that he should verify. Therefore, Noah did not really want to inherit the position of the leader of the hierarchy. You don't have to make a decision immediately. White Yiksha seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and changed the topic. Think about it carefully before giving me a reply. Noah could only nod. Chapter 16:13. Successor to the ruler of the stratum. The next day, in the hall of No Name's base, Noah took advantage of the time when everyone was eating breakfast to tell everyone about this matter. Immediately, everyone present cried out in surprise. Wah, 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 wah. Black Rabbit immediately panicked. It seems like something incredible has happened. That's right. Rin was also a little flustered. Moreover, the community will be recommended to be promoted to a 5-digit number. Isn't this a little too sudden? Or rather, is this really okay? Flying Bird was not as panicked as Black Rabbit and Run, and asked doubtfully. Although we have already found the flag, our community is still a no name without a name. Let's not talk about whether or not the promotion to a 5-digit number will work. Let's talk about the ruler of the stratum. Is that something that a member of no name can succeed? I don't think there's any problem, Letitia said. Now, almost everyone in the box knows about Master's ability. Even if he belongs to a member of no name, no one will object, right? And if it's promoted to a 5-digit number, then it's even less of a problem. Pest continued Letitia's words. Let's not talk about the appearance of a successor to the stratum ruler in the community. Just based on the performance of No Name in this battle, there's no doubt that they should get first place. As a reward, it's not impossible for them to be promoted to a 5-digit number. Right now, I'm more concerned about whether or not No Name can get back their 5-digit and 6-digit number assets. 16th Night knocked on the table. Before they were reduced to No Name, This community was the largest power in the East District. Naturally, they had their own sphere of influence in the 5-digit and 6-digit numbers. If we can get back those assets, then we can shout, "Long live!" 3 times. Wasn't the property taken away by the Demon King Alliance? Yao asked curiously. Can it be taken back? There are still some things that can't be taken away. Ren finally calmed down a little and replied. For example, the land. The land that No Name held in the 5-digit and 6-digit numbers should still be there. Land? Flying Bird slightly raised her eyebrows. Don't tell me that it's been abandoned like the land in our base. Our community's 5-digit and 6-digit lands are basically some mineral veins and oil fields, Black Rabbit explained to Flying Bird. Mineral veins and oil fields are not as easily abandoned as farmlands and pastures, so those lands should still be intact. That's good. If that's the case, we won't have no confidence when we reach 5 digits. 16th Night laughed. If those mineral veins and oil fields are worth mining, the wealth of our community should instantly increase by a lot. It's not impossible for us to become the host of this event. Now that the flag has been reclaimed, our community's reputation has been raised to the peak because of Master's existence. If we take advantage of this time to develop, we should be able to make the community a true 5-digit number in about a year. Letitia smiled sweetly. Restoring the past glory of the community is no longer a dream, everyone. Letitia's words made a smile appear on the faces of everyone present. Their mood more or less became a little high. Wait a minute. You've misunderstood the main point. Noah hurriedly shouted for them to stop. Although your ideas can't be said to be wrong, they're all built on the condition that I become the Stratum ruler. If I can't become the Stratum ruler, then No Name naturally won't be able to reach 5 digits. All of these guesses will be nothing, right? Everyone was slightly startled and looked at each other. In other words, Pest asked with uncertainty, You don't want to become the Stratum ruler? Everyone present cast their gazes on Noah, their eyes filled with hope, expectation, and unease. There was no helping it. Noah's decision would determine whether or not No Name could regain its past glory and become the largest faction in the East District once again. Thus, let alone Black Rabbit, Letitia, Ren, and the other old members, even 16th Night, Flying Bird, and Yao hoped that Noah could become the Stratum ruler. Under the gazes of the crowd that were full of hope, expectation, and uneasiness, Noah's expression suddenly became awkward. Seeing this, everyone understood Noah's decision. Why? Yao asked in a confused manner. Isn't it very cool to become the Stratum ruler? Whether or not it's cool is secondary, Noah said in a somewhat speechless manner. The problem is, even if I become the Stratum ruler, I won't have the time to complete my duties as the Stratum ruler. No time. Everyone was immediately confused. Seeing this, Noah hesitated for a moment before saying, I have my own matters to deal with as well. I also have my own things to deal with. Maybe, after a while, I will leave boxing. Right? Leave the box court? Everyone was surprised. Master, you plan to leave the box court? Letitia frowned. Why? Pest did not say anything. Instead, she stared closely at Noah, a trace of anxiety appearing in her eyes. Clearly seeing the anxiety in Pest's eyes, Noah seemed to have read Pest's thoughts. He extended his hand and patted Pest's head. Rest assured, I will only leave after I'm done with your matters. Only then did the anxiety in Pest's eyes disappear. However, it was soon replaced by confusion. Evidently, Pest also did not understand why Noah wanted to leave the box court. I also have my own reasons. Noah laughed bitterly. Well, if nothing unexpected happens, we will be able to meet in a month's time, right? Only then did everyone breathe a sigh of relief. Since it's only a month's time, there shouldn't be any major problems, right? Letitia looked at Noah with her deep red eyes. If that's the case, why don't you become the Stratum ruler? Even if it's only a month's time, it will still become a problem. No? Noah spoke helplessly. Could it be that you all think that it won't become a problem if the Stratum ruler is not in power for a month? That was true. Ignoring everything else, if the Demon King were to suddenly attack during this 1 month's time, If the Stratum ruler was not in power, how would they face the Demon King? Could it be that they were to allow the Demon King to wreak havoc and wait until a month's time to deal with it? At that time, who knew how much damage would be done to the Eastern District? Moreover, the Stratum ruler's job was far from just fighting against the Demon King. For example, some illegal activities and organizations that were harmful to the order of the Eastern District needed to be banned. Additionally, the setting of the usage fees for every outer sect gate, the approval of the Eastern District's community's promotion application, the creation of the promotion trial, the decision of the Game of Grace, held periodically by the Eastern District, and so on, all of these tasks required the Stratum ruler to complete. Once the Stratum ruler was no longer in power, who knew how chaotic the entire district would become? Noah did not want to become an irresponsible person. Thus, if he wanted to become the Stratum ruler, he must consider the issue of fulfilling his duties. At the very least, if he could not solve this problem during the 1 month's time, Noah would not agree to become the Stratum ruler. So that's how it is. Letitia nodded and suddenly said, "If that's the case, Master can be at ease. With me here, let alone 1 month's time, no matter how long it takes, it won't be a problem." What? Noah was stunned. "Master, did you forget?" Letitia looked at Noah reproachfully, raised her head and puffed out her chest, one hand pressed against her chest, and said proudly, "Even if I'm only a little maid under Master's command now, in the past, I was once a Stratum ruler with full power. It's just a Stratum ruler's job. Let me carry it out. It's not a difficult thing." Letitia's words woke him up from his dream. That's right, that's right." Black Rabbit happily clapped his hands. "No matter what, Master Letitia is the owner of a 4-digit divine spark, and also the owner of the sun of Ophiuchus constellation. Carrying out the Stratum ruler's job is not a problem at all." "That's right." Letitia smiled and said to Noah, "So, Master, you can rest assured and do your own things. The Stratum ruler's job, let me carry it out on your behalf." Hearing this, Noah muttered to himself. After a while, Noah finally made his decision. "You agreed?" In one of the rooms in the throne hall, White Yiksha looked at Noah with surprise. Yesterday night, when he saw Noah hesitating and being in a difficult position, White Yiksha thought that Noah would not agree to this matter. Now that the situation had taken a turn, with Noah taking over the Stratum ruler's position, the safety of the lower realm could basically rest easy. "That's great." White Yiksha happily stood up. "Since that's the case, there's no time to lose. I'll announce this matter now. Before that, I might leave for a period of time. In the period that I'm not around, my job will be temporarily taken over by Letitia," Noah said directly. "As for the Stratum ruler's appointment, wait until I help Pest to fulfill her wish." Pest's wish? White Yiksha's face suddenly froze. Immediately, after being silent for a while, he looked at Noah with an unprecedentedly serious expression. "Can you tell me about this matter?" Chapter 16:14. Originally, Noah had only casually mentioned Pest's matter. However, seeing White Yiksha's unprecedentedly serious expression, Noah immediately sensed that something was amiss. Then, Noah's heart skipped a beat. Thinking about it carefully, Pest had also said that the reason why the Black Death was prevalent was because someone had used the sun's sovereignty to change the sun's periodic activity. As an existence who held more than half of the sun's sovereignty in the past, it was impossible for White Yiksha to not know the inside story, right? Thus, Noah looked at White Yiksha with a thoughtful look in his eyes. "White Yiksha, do you know something?" White Yiksha immediately fell silent. Noah wasn't in a hurry as he quietly waited for White Yiksha's reaction. Not long after, White Yiksha suddenly spoke. "If you're referring to something related to the Demon King of the Black Death, then I do know something that had a lot to do with it." Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. Looking at Noah, White Yiksha said, "Do you know what's wrong? Do you know about dystopia?" Dystopia? Noah was stunned. Utopia. It referred to the concept of utopia, which was considered the most beautiful society in human thought. In this concept, it was generally believed that all citizens should obtain an equal income, build a residence without differences, and turn everything into an equal existence. living every day without distinction between good and bad. In such a society, brilliant gems should have the same value as dull stones, and resources should be equalized. The term price didn't exist, and one could get as many resources as they wanted. Therefore, there was no struggle between people there, and they lived an absolutely equal life. Dystopia, on the other hand, was the opposite of an ideal world like utopia. It meant that utopia was actually a place filled with ugliness and misfortune. That was because in such a place, the so-called rarity didn't exist, and it wouldn't nurture independence. Living in such a society, although there was no struggle, discrimination, or epidemic, living the same life every day, every month, every second was the greatest torture and even misfortune. Therefore, in this kind of society, although it was peaceful on the surface, it was filled with all kinds of uncontrollable evils. In this society where material civilization was rampant and higher than spiritual civilization, the human spirit was extremely dependent on material. The human spirit did not have true freedom in a highly developed technological society. However, that was to be expected. If everything became equal in terms of resources, then people would no longer need to work tirelessly for the sake of resources. That sounded good, but it was only a superficial increase in the standard of living of humans. After all, not needing to run around and be tired meant that humans would lose the meaning of working hard. Every day, they would be like walking corpses without any meaning. Therefore, utopia would lead to the loss of human freedom, the spread of material waste, the decline of morality, the oppression of democracy, the rampant class system, the rampant suicidal atmosphere, and so on. In the end, it would lead humans to destruction. This was the idea of a dystopian society. Noah still possessed this level of knowledge. However, Noah was still stunned. This was because Noah did not know why White Yiksha would suddenly mention dystopia here. What? You didn't realize? White Yiksha smiled bitterly. Dystopia is an idea that will lead humans to destruction. As the factor that will lead to the end of humanity, it should be enough, right? His words jolted Noah's spirit. The factor that will lead to the end of humanity? Wasn't that? That's right, it's the final trial of humanity. White Yiksha's voice clearly entered Noah's ears. In the past, there was a final trial of humanity created by the personification of dystopian ideas in the box court. It was called the Demon King of the closed world. Noah had also heard of this matter, but he had not realized it before. No matter what, Noah did not expect that the topic of pest would be related to the final trial of humanity. Frowning, Noah said with some uncertainty, I remember. It was the final trial of humanity that turned the entire West District of the Box Court into a dystopian world. The people and livestock born and raised in the West District would slowly lose their lives over time. In the end, they would even become non-existent. Even the faith of the gods would be weakened, and the existence of the gods would be completely wiped out. Right? Yes. White Yiksha nodded. Therefore, in terms of the nature of the God-Slayer, the Demon King of the dystopian world is even worse than Az-Dakaha. It was because of the influence of dystopia that the West District did not participate in the battle against Az-Dakaha. The West District class rulers also did not appear. But that Demon King seems to have been defeated, right? Noah asked, Why are you mentioning him here? Yes, the Demon King of the dystopian world had been defeated. Moreover, it was defeated by the great alliance of class rulers formed by the community Noah was in before it was reduced to no name. Why would White Yiksha suddenly mention the Demon King of the dystopian world? White Yiksha seemed to know Noah's question and couldn't help but sigh. Then, do you know how the Demon King of the dystopian world was defeated? As for this, Noah didn't know anything. Although he found records about the Demon King of the dystopian world in the library of no name, there was no detailed description of how the Demon King was defeated. Rather, even the matter of the Demon King of the dystopian world being defeated by the great alliance of class rulers led by the predecessor of no name was not recorded in the books in the library. Noah learned about it from Letitia. Now, White Yiksha brought up this issue. Noah suddenly had a bad feeling. Under such circumstances, White Yiksha began to explain. You should also know that in human history, originally, the liberation of serfs was delayed until the early 1900s. As a result, it hindered the development of enlightenment and liberalism, right? Noah nodded with a heavy heart. Seeing Noah like this, White Yiksha sighed again. But you don't know that in the trajectory of human history, if enlightenment and liberalism are hindered, it will become the reason for the growth of dystopian ideas. Hearing this, Noah knew what had happened. The ominous premonition in his heart had come true. The Demon King's closed world is the personification of dystopian ideas. Therefore, the appearance of dystopian ideas is the reason for the birth of this human's final trial. White Yiksha said as if he couldn't bear it. In order to defeat this Demon King, in the past, led by the great alliance of class rulers who resisted the Demon King's dystopia, the people who challenged the closed world used the sun's sovereignty to change the sun's activity. This allowed the Black Death to spread from the 14th century and lasted for more than 100 years. In the end, it allowed the social status of serfs to rise ahead of time, promoting the development of enlightenment and liberalism, preventing the appearance of dystopian ideas, thus interrupting the connection to the future of the closed world and making the Demon King of the dystopian world disappear. In other words, the Black Death pandemic was promoted in order to defeat the Demon King's closed world. And the people who promoted this matter were part of the great alliance of class rulers led by No Name's predecessor. The target of Pest's revenge was not the sun. Instead, it was everyone in the great alliance of class rulers in the past, including No Name. Do you understand why I'm so concerned about Pest's wish? White Yiksha looked straight at Noah. Although this is only my conjecture, if the wish of that little girl, who is responsible for the deaths of 80 million people, is to prevent the Black Death from occurring, then human history will return to the path of promoting dystopian ideologies. At that time, the history of the Black Death will be erased and the Demon King's closed world will be revived. The entire closed world will once again face the threat of the human's final trial. White Yiksha said extremely solemnly, "Kid, you have to think carefully before you act." Noah's expression finally sank. Chapter 16:15. Pest, who did not know what Noah and White Yiksha were talking about, was currently together with the members of No Name. They were gathered in the main hall, discussing the matter of the ruler of the hierarchy. To be more precise, No Name and the others were excitedly chatting about how Noah would soon become the ruler of the upper class. Pest was merely looking at this scene with a bored expression. Actually, Pest herself was surprised by Noah becoming the ruler of the upper echelons. Yet, she also felt that it was only natural. She was surprised because she did not expect that as an original Demon King, there would be a day when she would become the ruler of the hierarchy. Naturally, it was like what White Yiksha and 16th Night said before. After White Yiksha abdicated, there was no one more suitable than Noah to become the ruler of the hierarchy in the entire East District. No matter what, the current Noah already possessed the ability to become the overlord of the entire box court. In terms of combat strength, Noah was already in existence on par with White Yiksha and the Queen of All Saints level. Not to mention, Noah also possessed all 24 sovereign suns and another cosmology. Even Pest had no choice but to admit this. The current Noah had already grown to a level that surpassed her imagination. Although she had always felt that Noah possessed limitless possibilities and would definitely occupy a place in the box court in the future, Pest did not expect that this day would actually come so quickly. However, Pest had no reason to be unhappy. That was because with the current Noah's ability, accomplishing his wish was something that could be done with a wave of his hand. As for the consequences of erasing the history of the Black Death, Pest no longer had to worry about it. After all, the matter of Noah massacring all the gods of over 100 god groups had already spread throughout the entire box court. With this, which idiot would dare to cause trouble for Noah? If the history of the Black Death was erased, the interests of a portion of the god groups and demon kings would indeed be affected. However, before Noah's frightening battle achievements. Those fellows would most likely not dare to voice their anger. Thus, Pest's mood could be said to be very relaxed. At first, I thought this wish was almost impossible to realize. To the previous Pest, becoming enemies with a group of gods and demon kings was no different from courting death. Because of that, the desire to eliminate the Black Death had always been a very heavy desire in Pest's heart. However, ever since she met Noah, Pest's situation changed completely. Perhaps this is also a matter of fate. Pest no longer had any complaints toward her master, Noah. In fact, after the day Pest poured out her wish to Noah, she had already made a vow in her heart. Since you have shouldered all of my burden, then I will also strive to become an indispensable existence by your side. With this determination in mind, Pest accepted Athena's training. The reason why Pest was able to reach 4 digits in level in a short month was because she still had a lot of potential that could be developed. It was also because of her determination. To put it bluntly, the current Pest no longer had any disloyalty toward Noah. Although what I possess is only determination, it cannot compare to the loyalty of my colleagues. With that thought in mind, Pest turned around and looked in Letitia's direction. There, Letitia was listening to Flying Bird, Light, Black Rabbit, and the others' excited conversation with a smile on her face. At this moment, Flying Bird, Light, Black Rabbit, and the others were, without a doubt, talking about Noah. They were talking about how Noah had become the ruler of the upper echelon, how he had allowed Nonme to reach 5 digits in level, how he had managed to retrieve all of his past wealth, and how he would be able to recover his past glory in a short period of time. While they were happily discussing this, they were also praising Noah for his contributions and achievements. Hearing these praises and admiration for Noah, Letitia felt happy from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps even Letitia herself did not notice this. If someone were to give a good evaluation of Noah, Letitia would feel very happy. If someone were to give a bad evaluation of Noah, Letitia would feel extremely dissatisfied. Evidently, this purebred vampire was sincerely proud of her master's achievements and abilities. She had placed all of her heart and soul on Noah. Compared to Letitia, Pest felt that her determination was inferior. This caused Pest to feel extremely displeased. What's so great about that? Sooner or later, I will also have such loyalty toward my master. Pest did not notice that her thoughts were very close to jealousy. Letitia was able to place all of her heart and soul on Noah, dedicating her heart and soul to Noah. Pest, who was unable to do the same, was feeling jealous. I'm also master subordinate. Feeling that she had lost to Letitia, Pest glared at Letitia with an extremely unreconciled expression. Amen. Letitia seemed to have sensed something strange. She turned her head around and looked in Pest's direction. When she saw Pest glaring fiercely at her, she was involuntarily startled. She spoke in a suspicious manner. What's wrong, Pest? It's nothing. Pest turned her head away as if she was throwing a tantrum. I just wanted to tell you, Letitia, my strength is already in the 4 digits now. I am not inferior to you. Oh, Letitia's beautiful brows were slightly raised, as if she had seen through the unreconciled and jealous feelings in Pest's heart. She said with a smile that was not a smile. However, strength does not mean everything. Rather than comparing the disparity between your battle power and mine, why don't you think about how to brew black tea, iron your clothes, and hone your ability to do housework? That would be of great help to your master. Woo! Pest was immediately rendered speechless, as if her weak point had been poked. Facing this, Letitia merely looked at Pest with a joyous expression. This caused Pest to feel a sense of superiority. The corners of her mouth started twitching. Aren't you just a bit more adorable than me, a bit more powerful than me, a bit more knowledgeable than me, a bit more likable than me, and a bit more doted on by that guy than me? What's there to be arrogant about? Just as Letitia and Pest were carrying out an unknown comparison between maids, Noah finally returned. Noah's appearance immediately attracted everyone's attention. Mr. Noah, Black Rabbit's rabbit ears twitched slightly. Just as she was about to pounce toward Noah and ask about the progress of the matter, she suddenly stopped and shut her mouth. It was not only Black Rabbit. The others also subconsciously stopped talking. This caused the entire Hall of No Name to become deathly silent. There was only a single reason for such a situation to occur. That was, Noah's brows were deeply furrowed. An undissolvable sorrow could be seen between his brows. Seeing Noah in such a state, for some unknown reason, Pest's mood became somewhat restless. "Master?" Letitia spoke in confusion. Did something happen? Only after entering the hall did Noah raise his head. His gaze swept past the faces of his little companions. In the end, his gaze was fixed on Pest. The anxiety in Pest's heart immediately grew even stronger. This caused her tone to become somewhat uneasy. What's wrong?" Sensing Pest's uneasiness, Noah laughed bitterly. He took a deep breath and patted his cheeks to pull himself together. "My apologies, Pest. There is something that I wish to discuss with you first." Pest immediately sensed that this matter was not simple. At the same time, she also understood that this matter was greatly related to her. Thus, she could only nod her head. Soon after, before the confused gazes of the crowd, Noah and Pest entered the room. An hour later, Noah and Pest came out from the room. Although they did not know what Noah and Pest were talking about, Pest's eyes were red after coming out from the room. There were even traces of tears on her young and tender face. It was clear that she had cried. This caused the crowd to be extremely shocked. Of course, that was not the most important thing. What truly caused an uproar was a matter that Noah announced after that. Chapter 16:16. Defeating Aziz Dakaha was only yesterday. During the celebration banquet last night, almost everyone in the vampire's castle drank until they were dead drunk. Even after waking up the next day, they were still full of joy. However, the matter of the humans' final trial was already over. Next, the various communities in the vampire's castle would have to return to their respective bases. Therefore, although the joy in their hearts did not disappear, the wise leaders of the communities had already begun to plan with their companions how to deal with the aftermath and develop after returning. Before Noah's return, the various communities in the vampire's castle had formed an alliance army and challenged Aziz Dakaha. That battle, compared to the previous day, was really too tragic. Almost every community had casualties and losses. After that, although under the leadership of Sarah and Shadora, the communities jointly held a memorial service to let the dead rest in peace. The casualties still caused these communities to suffer losses in the end. In order to make up for these comrades who had died bravely in battle, many communities had to start thinking about recruiting people. Of course, this was no longer a difficult thing to do. This was because the communities that had participated in Aziz Dakaha's battle had now become one of the hottest topics in people's mouths. Although it was not as outrageous as Noah's, the reputation of the communities that had participated in the battle had also increased. It was believed that with this point alone, these communities would be able to make a name for themselves, recruit good members, and even expand their forces and develop in all aspects, right? With the fact and merit of participating in the battle against the humans' final trial, there were even some communities in the vampire's castle that were prepared to submit an application to the ruler of the hierarchy to be promoted to a higher level. Therefore, the loss of the communities was only temporary. Soon, the communities that had participated in the battle against Aziz Dakaha would recover to their former level and expand further, right? It was precisely because of this benefit that many communities came to participate in the battle. After all, not all communities had the resolve to protect everyone in the box from the hands of the Demon King. Among the communities that came to participate in the battle, some were doing it in the name of righteousness, some were doing it for the sake of this merit, and some even just wanted to gain merit. However, no matter what the reason was, these communities did not hesitate to fight with their lives on the line. They had fought bravely until now. This was a fact that had to be acknowledged. Therefore, people still had to acknowledge the meritorious officials. However, at this critical juncture, a shocking piece of news began to spread throughout the vampire's castle. Have you heard? Lord Noah's No Name was preparing to head to the Western District. crusade against another human in the final trial. While what? Are you kidding me? Weren't all the humans defeated in the final trial? That's right. Undoubtedly, Az is the last human in the final trial, right? Who's talking nonsense over there? No name. We'll head to the Western District and crusade against another human in the final trial. The news spread like wildfire. Nobody knew when it started, but had spread throughout the entire castle of vampires. It even went out of the castle and set off an uproar in the entire courtyard. That was to be expected. It must be known that the humans in the final trial were given the title of God Slayer. They could even wipe out the gods in the heavenly realm. The entire courtyard would be shaken, threatening the existence of the entire human history. Although there have been many such existences in the past, Az was the last one to do so. Now that Az had been defeated, where did another human in the final trial come from? Could it be that after the fall of the three-headed dragon, another element of destruction had appeared in human history, giving birth to a new human in the final trial? For a moment, there was a lot of talk, causing those communities that were preparing to set off and return to their bases to start developing to have no choice but to give up on their plans and prepare to investigate the truth. Thus, the leaders of the communities all headed towards the direction of the throne hall, intending to find a group of rulers and ask them what was going on. As a result, the entire minister's seat hall was completely surrounded. After that, Noah personally came out of the throne hall and admitted to this matter in front of everyone. After Noah admitted to the truth of this matter, White Yiksha, Sarah, and Shadora also came out of the throne hall and announced that as the rulers of the eastern, southern, and northern regions, they would fully support No Name and head to the Western District to defeat the humans in the final trial. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The entire castle of vampires was in an uproar. The entire courtyard was also in an uproar. All the communities that were preparing to return to their bases could only give up on the plans in their hearts. After a day of buffer, the next day, all the communities that were still in Castle of Vampires all volunteered to follow Noah and the others to the Western District to deal with the humans in the final trial. Regarding this, Noah personally came out again and solemnly thanked everyone. He also announced that after the Demon King of the Dystopia was defeated, he would take over the position of White Yiksha and become the ruler of the Eastern District. This news caused the entire courtyard to be in an uproar again. Especially the people in the Eastern District, after knowing that Noah was about to become the ruler of the Eastern District, they were all overjoyed. Compared to these two matters, the announcement of other trivial matters became less eye-catching. For example, as the community of the rulers of the Eastern District, the matter of No Name being promoted to a 5-digit number became commonplace. Moreover, many communities were also promoted by the rulers of the Eastern District. The matter of them being promoted also did not become too eye-catching. Among these matters, there were only two things worth mentioning. 1. The community of Will-O-Wisp, who is known as the strongest demon in the Northern District, would migrate to the Eastern District and form an alliance with No Name to develop together. 2. The communities that belonged to the many god groups in the heavenly realm who had been avoiding battle all began to gather in Castle of Vampires. They voluntarily volunteered and expressed their willingness to work with No Name to fight the Dystopia Demon King in the Western District. Obviously, this time, the gods in the heavenly realm had completely dispelled the idea of abandoning the courtyard and were ready to stand on the same front as Noah. This approach had the intention of easing the relationship between them, and also the intention of using the battle with the Dystopian Demon King to wash away the previous stigma. Under such circumstances, the various conflicts between the Alliance Army and the God Group Army in Castle of Vampires will be a story for later. And when the entire courtyard was in an uproar, finally, the news of the final trial of humans in the Western District began to be confirmed. 3 days later, with No Name as the leader, all the communities that gathered in Castle of Vampires began to move towards the Western District. As a result, the battle with the Dystopia Demon King lasted for nearly a month. A month later, Noah single-handedly defeated the Dystopia Demon King and killed him with his own hands. Finally, Peace was restored to the entire courtyard. In the battle with the Dystopia Demon King, because Noah took the lead, there were miraculously no casualties. It would be better to say that in order not to let his decision kill innocent bystanders, Noah tried his best to avoid casualties, which led to this result. After killing the Dystopia Demon King, Noah returned to the Eastern District and officially took over the position of the ruler of the hierarchy from White Yiksha, becoming the guardian of order in the Eastern District. In this way, White Yiksha finally unloaded a heavy burden and prepared to go to the heavenly realm. In order to reward White Yiksha, who had been the ruler of the hierarchy for a long time and had done his best for the Eastern District, Noah held a farewell party. Lord Noah! Lord Noah! At the scene of the farewell party, as soon as Noah entered the venue, he was immediately welcomed by everyone. Flood Dragon Lu saw Noah from afar, raised his hand, and shouted at Noah. Little brother Noah, over here! Seeing this, Noah suddenly smiled, raised his feet, and walked over. Chapter 16-17. The location of the farewell party was naturally in the Eastern District. Moreover, it was in an outer sect in the Eastern District that was rated as having the most beautiful environment. It was an area where cherry blossoms would unbelievably bloom all year long. Noah spent his own money and rented an entire piece of land in a corner of this area to hold the banquet. The races from the Eastern District, Southern District, Northern District, and even the Western District all came to attend the banquet. Orcs, mirage beasts, elves, demons, and even Rakshasa. All the races from the 4 districts of Box Court had come to the scene. They surrounded the cloth mats that were spread directly on the lawn that was full of cherry blossom trees. They enjoyed good wine and good food while chatting and laughing. Noah responded to everyone's greetings as he walked past the seats and came to where Jiao Lu was. Other than Jiao Lu, there were also Jialing, 16 Knights, Sarah, and Shadora. Sarah and Shadora are here too. Noah greeted Sarah and Shadora, and then looked at 16 Knights with a helpless smile. I was wondering where you went. So you've been here for a long time? After all, we're not as busy as the ruler of the hierarchy. If we came early, we could have encountered many good things, right? 16 Knights showed a provocative expression and shrugged. In fact, there were many good things. Now, we're listening to 2 of the 7 days of the legend of bravery with the gods in the heaven realm. Compared with what little brother Noah has done in the past 2 months, what we have done is nothing, Lu Jiao said with a wry smile. Little brother's 16th night, why did you have to mention this in front of little brother Noah? Aren't you just trying to embarrass us? So it turns out that the renowned Rock Demon King actually still cares about this sort of thing. 16th Night laughed loudly. Don't mind it. I can guarantee that it's not that your legend of bravery isn't good enough. It's just that little brother broke the rules too much and can't be compared to him. What do you mean I broke the rules too much? Noah sat down under Sarah and Shadora's greeting. He picked up a glass of wine and said in an annoyed tone, the 7-day war back then was said to have split the entire Hakata into 2. Compared to that, what I'm doing is just a small matter, right? A small fight. Jia Ling said in a coquettish manner. If what you've done in the past 2 months is just a small matter, then we really don't have the face to see anyone. That's right, Jiao Lu echoed. Who could be like little brother Noah, single-handedly killing 2 humans in the final trial, sealing 1,000,000 deities, slaughtering all the deities of over 100 deities, and gathering the sovereignty of all 24 suns. Not to mention, you've also gained the approval of absolute evil and been entrusted with Avesta's another cosmology, Jia Ling said with a hint of delight. I clearly remember when you used Avesta's another cosmology in the battle against the dystopian demon king, the expressions of the deities under the command of the deities. Jiao Lu, 16 Knights, Sarah, and Shadora all smiled when Jia Ling mentioned it. Even Noah couldn't help but smile. Compared to absolute evil, the demon king who had the title A Closed World was definitely stronger, not weaker. When dealing with the 3-headed dragon, because of the 3-headed dragon's another cosmology, Noah's another cosmology was of no use at all. However, when dealing with the dystopia, Noah's 2 another cosmology finally came in handy. With the having effect of illusory star Taisui on Ling and the imitation effect of Avesta, Noah fully utilized the power of the two another cosmology in the battle against the dystopia, weakening the enemy and strengthening himself. However, the dystopia Demon King was still a human in the final trial, and there was indeed an extremely tricky part. Not to mention other things, because the Demon King's nature as a god-slayer was more against the rules than the three-headed dragon. At the beginning of the battle, Noah's authority was completely restrained, and he almost failed miserably. Fortunately, Noah's authority had long since transformed into his own power under his own constitution, and it was no longer the power of a god. To a certain extent, he was no longer restricted by the dystopia Demon King. Under the power of this Demon King that could even weaken the faith of a god, if it were any other god other than Noah, not to mention using their power, they might even be instantly killed, right? Because of this, Pest, a 4-digit death god, did not even dare to enter the battlefield. She hid in the rear and was responsible for providing support. Needless to say, she was very sullen. In the end, even Noah was forced to use both of his another cosmology. Only then was he able to turn the tables on the dystopia Demon King. Even so, the dystopia Demon King still managed to last for an entire month before being killed. From this, it could be seen that the human in the final trial was definitely not much weaker than the three-headed dragon. Other than Noah, there was probably no one else in the entire box who could fight the dystopia Demon King one-on-one. After this battle, the matter of Noah obtaining Avesta was completely exposed. The expressions of the communities under the command of the gods of the celestial realms were very interesting. Thinking up to this point, Noah looked at Jiao Lu, Jiao Ling, Sarah, and Shadora and said very solemnly, "Thank you very much, everyone." Everyone present knew the inside story of why Noah would go up against the dystopia Demon King. After explaining everything to Pest and making the decision to fulfill Pest's wish of reviving the dystopia Demon King, Noah explained the inside story to these people. Thus, disregarding the Alliance army and the God army, those who were closer to Noah were all people who knew the inside story. However, after Noah made this decision, although everyone was extremely shocked and had all sorts of reactions, some even voiced their objections, in the end, they all agreed with Noah. Because of my own stubbornness, I caused everyone to pointlessly engage in a battle that required them to put their lives on the line. I am very sorry. Noah sighed. Although I have said the same words many times, I still feel that I have to say them. You are too serious, little brother Noah. Jiao Lu laughed in spite of himself. After I was enlightened by you, didn't I already tell you to leave your back to me? That promise was not only effective in the battle against AZ Daka. Jiao Ling smiled sweetly. You are the person that Big Sister acknowledged. In the past month or so, we have fully witnessed the righteousness and ability in your heart. Following you to battle everywhere is something that we are willing to do. To be honest, at the beginning, we were also shocked. Sarah recalled the matter at that time and couldn't help but sigh. He actually took the initiative to resurrect humans in the final trial. That is really unheard of. If I didn't believe that Mr. Noah is not the kind of person who would let innocent people fall into the abyss of suffering, I would have stood up to object no matter what, right? On the other hand, Mr. Noah is willing to bear the burden of resurrecting and killing humans in the final trial for a subordinate. Although it is very scary, it makes people feel that you are trustworthy, Shadora said in a childish voice. Lord White Yiksha must also trust Mr. Noah, which is why he agreed to resurrect dystopia with you, right? That's it, little brother. 16th Night patted Noah's shoulder. Although it was your stubbornness, with your efforts, we did not suffer any casualties. That is enough. Okay. Noah raised his wine cup. I won't say any more. Let me offer you a toast. Everyone smiled and raised their wine cups, drinking it in one gulp. Chapter 16-18. Bang! Just as Noah, Jiao Lu, Jiao Ling, Sarah, Shadora, and 16th Night were happily drinking, a loud noise rang out, causing the entire ground to tremble. Following the loud noise, a huge water column shot up into the sky from the center of the banquet hall. It only fell after reaching hundreds of meters in the air. At the same time, screams rang out in the air. Those screams were coming from the mouths of the people around them. When the water column shot up into the sky, a group of people was also swept up into the air along with the water column. Then, they fell to the ground with a series of screams. Looking at this scene, Noah was more or less in a daze. Soon after, he finally saw the situation in the direction of the rising water pillar. There was a lake there. In the center of the lake, a circular platform floated on the water surface. White Yiksha, who was wearing a kimono, stood on the platform and waved a fan in his hand with a joyful expression. Every time White Yiksha waved the fan, the entire lake would shake with a water column, sending the rest of the people on the platform into the air. They screamed as they fell to the ground. Regarding this, the surrounding crowd not only clapped and cheered, but they also eagerly rushed to the platform in the center of the lake. Then, they were mercilessly sent flying by White Yiksha's water column. It was like a performance, causing Noah to be a little stunned. What's going on? Are you talking about that? 16th Knight glanced at the platform in the center of the lake and said casually, "That's the entertainment program hosted by White Yiksha." Entertainment program? Noah blinked and looked in Sarah's direction. Sensing Noah's gaze, Sarah explained. After arriving at the scene, Lord White Yiksha claimed that eating and drinking wasn't very satisfying, so he occupied the lake and hosted a bestowment game in the center of the lake. The general rule is that as long as you can push Lord White Yiksha out of the platform, the challenger will win. Even if they lose, they can continue to challenge until the banquet ends, Shadora continued. If you can win, then as the former ruler of the East District, Lord White Yiksha will reward the victor. It's a pity that although you only need to push him out of the platform to win, that kind of head-on confrontation is incomparable to the White Knight King, who is the strongest among the star spirits, right? Jiao Lu shrugged. Even if all the capable people in the East, West, South, and North regions are gathered here, without a 3-digit level, it would be difficult to even make the White Knight King move, let alone push him out of the arena. Even so, there are still many people who wish to participate. Jia Ling curled his lips. My opponent is a monster ranked in the top 10 of the boxers. In a situation where it's just a simple challenge, there are as many people who want to fight the White Knight King as there are stars in the sky. If I can last for a while, not only will I be an individual, but even the community's reputation will increase greatly, right? It's because of this that White Yiksha organized that game, right? Noah was speechless. That fellow is already planning to leave, yet she still caused so much trouble. Well, no matter what, it's the last time. 16th Knight raised his wine cup and said very casually, "After today, who knows when I can return to the lower realm? Let her cause trouble." Under the circumstances of returning to godhood, White Yiksha was an individual who did not belong to any sect in the heaven realm. As for people like White Yiksha and the great sage, Heaven's Equal, who had great power but did not show any loyalty or affiliation to any sect, clan, or group of gods, they were always the targets that the gods were wary of. Therefore, unless White Yiksha could convert to Buddhism and obtain the godhood, he could suppress his power and confirm his affiliation, allowing the gods to more or less be at ease. Otherwise, he would not be allowed to return to the lower realm as he pleased. By the time White Yiksha retrieved the godhood and returned to the lower realm, who knew how long he would have to wait? After all, if the godhood could be returned and retrieved as one wished, then the matters in the world would not be so troublesome. It was because of this that everyone allowed White Yiksha to cause trouble, right? However, in order to defeat the White Knight King in a head-on confrontation, there is only one person in the entire Hakkada's 4 regions who could do such a thing, 16th Knight said to Noah, with an insufferably arrogant attitude. How about it? Aren't you going to give it a try? Me? Noah swirled the wine in the wine cup in his hand, his dark and deep eyes reflecting some interest. To be able to exchange blows with someone who is ranked in the top 10 of the boxers, and only 17 of them in the double digits. It's not that I'm not interested. I think you should consider it carefully before taking action. Jiao Lu said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. If I let the two of you, who stand at the pinnacle of the boxers, fight, then not only that platform, but the entire outer sect district will suffer, right? Second brother is right. Even Jia Ling showed a rare expression of bitterness. Little brother Noah, you've just become the ruler of the East District. Don't tell me you're thinking of completely destroying your own territory? Sarah and Shadora immediately nodded furiously, cold sweat dripping from their foreheads. Compared to the two rulers of the East District, these two rulers who were ranked in the top 5 were simply child's play. Noah naturally understood what everyone was worried about. However, Noah had to participate in White Yiksha's game. You all know that in a direct confrontation, only I can defeat White Yiksha here. It's even more impossible for White Yiksha to not know. Noah scratched his cheek. So, that game of bestowment was obviously prepared for me to participate. Everyone was startled at first, but soon after, they nodded thoughtfully. Boom! At this moment, a water column shot up into the sky from the center of the lake, and a large group of people were sent flying. This time, among the people who fell from the sky, there were even Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Letitia, and Pest. A few girls screamed as they fell from the sky. With a series of plop sounds, they fell into the lake. Noah covered his face and couldn't bear to look at it. Those girls actually went to challenge him too. The girls in our community are really competitive. 16th Night was dumbfounded. Although they participated in 2 battles against the humans in the final trial and increased their strength a lot, they still can't challenge the strongest species of the Star Elves, right? It seems that I have to go. Noah sighed. After putting down the wine cup in his hand, he stood up. Then, I'll go and meet White Yiksha. After speaking, without giving everyone time to react, Noah directly dodged and jumped high. After drawing a perfect parabola in the air, he landed on the platform in the center of the lake. Oh, the expression on White Yiksha's face finally became serious, but his smile was getting wider. You're finally willing to come up? Kid, you're indeed waiting for me. Noah curled his lips and smiled. You want to use this battle to tell the people in the East District that I, your successor, have the real ability to sit in your position? That's one of the reasons. Other than that, I personally hope to be able to fight with you. White Yiksha opened the fan in his hand and covered the lower half of his face, but his eyes were fixed on Noah. To be able to defeat the hero of the final trial twice, how can I, the White Knight Monarch, not confirm his ability with my own hands? Noah didn't expect White Yiksha to say such a thing. He was first surprised, then he revealed a smile. If that's the case, then bring it on. Of course. White Yiksha laughed loudly. Accept the challenge of the White Knight Demon King, the hero of humanity. In the end, the battle lasted until the evening. In the end, when the entire lake evaporated completely, White Yiksha took the initiative to admit defeat, allowing Noah to win. After that, White Yiksha didn't say goodbye to anyone and left silently, returning to the Heaven Realm. Chapter 1619. Outer Gate of Box 210-5380. The base of the community, no name. Phew! In the hall's vast bathing area, Noah soaked his body in the warm water. As he let out a sigh of relief, he smiled bitterly. It's one thing for White Yiksha to leave without saying goodbye, but he actually left behind such a huge mess for me to clean up. After the farewell party ended, White Yiksha slipped away in an extremely carefree manner. However, as the organizer of the banquet and the leader of the East District, Noah had to clean up the mess. For example, he had to arrange for people to send back the people who had completely collapsed from drinking. For example, he had to clean up the mess left behind by the banquet. Another example was to restore the lake that had evaporated due to the intense battle to its original state. Arranging things one after another exhausted Noah. However, I never expected White Yiksha to be so strong. He's indeed worthy of being ranked in the top 10 strongest species in Box Court. In order to not cause too much of a disaster, Noah and White Yiksha subconsciously controlled their powers. This only resulted in the evaporation of a lake. Of course, Although they controlled their powers, in order to determine who was stronger, Noah and White Yiksha both used some of their true abilities. The degree of power they controlled also seemed to be blessed with good fortune, and they controlled it more or less. Even so, Noah was still forced into desperate straits by White Yiksha several times. If not for the various abilities of the 10 incarnations, which allowed him to constantly switch between incarnations, as well as the power of many treasures, which allowed him to avert all kinds of dangers, Noah would have been injured long ago. In return for politeness, Noah did not let White Yiksha off easily. He personally sent the strongest sun star spirit into danger several times. At Noah and White Yiksha's level, even if they showed mercy, the battle would definitely be dangerous if they really fought. Therefore, this was not strange at all. However, it was only natural that the onlookers would be frightened out of their wits when they saw this. Unfortunately, if I don't use another cosmology, I won't be able to win easily. In a battle with White Yiksha, Noah deliberately did not use the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Otherwise, Noah only needed to use one of Avesta and illusory star Taisway to defeat White Yiksha. However, Noah wanted to verify the difference between him and White Yiksha, who stood at the peak of Box Court, without using another cosmology. From the looks of it, if I use 4 incarnations at the same time, I can indeed match an existence like White Yiksha, who has a 2-digit number. During this period of time, Noah had sealed 1 million deities, slaughtered thousands of deities, and killed 2 humans in the final trial. He had long since accumulated a lot of EXP and great achievements. Therefore, after updating his ability value, Noah's ability value also received a huge improvement, allowing Noah to use 4 incarnations at the same time. Moreover, that's not my limit. Noah silently measured his strength. With my current ability value, even if I use 5 incarnations at the same time, I can still maintain it for a long time, right? Once he used 5 incarnations at the same time, Noah was confident that even if he did not use another cosmology, he could firmly suppress existences at the level of White Yiksha and Halloween Queen. In other words, now, even if he did not calculate another cosmology, Noah had the ability to stand at the peak of Box Court. In the past few months in Box Court, I've improved a lot, Noah said. However, even so, I still can't use Sun sovereignty to draw out the possibility of the body. Just now, Noah had the ability to stand at the peak of Box Court. If he could draw out the possibility of the body that even all 24 Sun sovereignty could not successfully draw out, and turn all the potential in the body into strength, it was hard for Noah to imagine what kind of realm he could reach. Logically speaking, with such a large capital and enough power to dominate Box Court, Noah should be satisfied. However, in Noah's heart, there was a shadow that could not make him feel satisfied. On the day that he used all 24 Sun sovereignty to try to draw out the possibility of the body but failed, Noah saw the eye in his dream. Until now, Noah still remembered. At that time, when he was stared at by the eye, his whole body trembled and felt fear. Thinking of this, Noah's hand that was soaked in the water slowly clenched into a fist. Then what is it? It was not that Noah did not have his own speculations about the existence of the eye, but it was only a guess after all. Noah felt that if he did not confirm this guess, he might be upset for the rest of his life. It's time to leave. The soft murmuring sound echoed clearly in the spacious and quiet bathing area. So much so that other than Noah, the other 2 people present also heard this sentence clearly. Leave? I knew it would turn out like this. The sudden voice startled Noah and woke him up. Immediately after, Noah discovered something. Unknowingly, 2 petite young girls had also soaked in the water. They were leaning against his body, one on his left and one on his right. Your vigilance is too low, Master, Letitia said jokingly. If you don't feel anything when being so close to you, all the legendary deeds you've accomplished all this time will be greatly discounted. Are you thinking about something complicated? Pest muttered with a bored tone. Then, it's not impossible to discuss it with us, right? The 2 young maids that belonged to Noah were like this. One had a calm expression, while the other had a slightly red face. However, neither of them chose to escape. Instead, they openly leaned against Noah's shoulder. Of course, the two young girls were completely naked. Their tender yet unique bodies were faintly discernible as they soaked in the hot water. They actually possessed a terrifying charm. Undoubtedly, the two young girls had the appearance of 11 or 12 years old girls. Yet they possessed such charm. Those who saw them, regardless of whether they were men or women, could imagine how beautiful they would be when they grew up to become mature women. Even Noah couldn't help but be startled. He asked almost subconsciously, "When did you two come in?" "We've been here for a while." Letitia's deep red eyes looked straight at Noah. It would appear that Master is truly thinking about something very complicated. "You don't even know when we came in." "I was only dragged in by Letitia." Pest resisted from the bottom of her heart. "Really, I wouldn't want to come in a bathhouse. I know that bathhouses were not popularized in the era when you were still alive. It is only natural that you are not used to it. However, you should be used to it by now, right?" Letitia glanced at Pest and smiled. "Besides, even though you said you were resisting, didn't you still obediently come in the moment I told you that Master was here and needed us to serve him?" "So annoying," Pest said impatiently. "There's no need to mention that sort of thing." Seeing the two young maids quarreling before him, Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This sort of scene was actually very common in the month he spent fighting against the Demon King of Dystopia. At an unknown point in time, Letitia and Pest's relationship had undergone some subtle changes. In the past, Letitia had been firmly suppressing Pest. Pest was suppressed to the point that she did not even dare to show her temper. Now, for some unknown reason, Letitia no longer paid attention to Pest's occasional rude behavior. At the same time that Pest felt fear toward Letitia, she would occasionally summon up her courage to resist. It was as if she planned to fight for something with Letitia. Yet, Letitia was enjoying it. Thus, the relationship between the two of them became as subtle as it was now. After quarreling for a while, Letitia stopped speaking. She turned around and looked at Noah. "Master, are you really planning to leave?" Chapter 16:20. "Master, are you really planning to leave?" Letitia's question caused the atmosphere in the vast bathing area to become somewhat heavy. At this moment, regardless of whether it was Letitia or Pest, both of them revealed expressions of reluctance. One must know that even though Letitia and Pest both appear to be 11 or 12 years old girls, one of them had actually lived for at least 1,000 years. As for the other, even if she hadn't lived for 1,000 years, she'd still lived for several hundred years. Furthermore, Letitia was the type of person who would not reveal a weak appearance. Pest was also the type of person who would not please others in all aspects. The two of them were not the type to easily reveal their true emotions. Under such circumstances, the two girls still could not help but reveal expressions of reluctance. From this, one could imagine that Letitia and Pest truly did not wish to see Noah leave from the bottom of their hearts. The two girls were saved by Noah. Noah had pulled Letitia and Pest out of the abyss of vengeance. He had also helped the two girls accomplish their wishes. In the hearts of the two girls, he had long since become the closest person to them. There was no other. Because of this, Noah's departure would inevitably cause Letitia and Pest to feel some reluctance. However, Noah's departure was something that could not be changed. "I also have my own matters that I need to attend to," Noah sighed. He raised his head and looked at the ceiling. "Although I act like a great person in front of you, I'm actually someone who hasn't even solved my own problems. If I can't even solve my own problems, then there's no need to talk about continuing to stay by your side." That's right. Even though Noah had managed to resolve Letitia and Pest matters, all this time, Noah had yet to even resolve his own matters. When he was born, he possessed the appearance, intelligence, and age of 10 years old. He possessed the 3 great constitutions that others did not possess. Only he alone was able to transcend the boundaries of the world and enter the space between worlds. Additionally, he also possessed the mission of restoring the destroyed worlds and receiving the care of the worlds. All of these proved Noah's uniqueness. In the eyes of others, Noah was someone who even the gods of the heavenly realm feared. He was someone who could single-handedly suppress humans in the final trial. He stood at the peak of humanity as a human. All of his deeds could only be described as legendary. But in fact, just like what Noah said, even though he achieved achievements that others couldn't achieve in one world after another, he was still a person who didn't even know his own origin. It wasn't that Noah hadn't thought about unraveling the mystery surrounding him. However, Gaia and Alea had never revealed anything to Noah, which proved that the time was not yet right. In the end, Noah could only suppress the thoughts in his heart and travel from one world to another while thinking of ways to increase his strength. To put it nicely, this kind of life was one of being positive and striving to find the opportunity to solve the puzzle in one's body as soon as possible. To put it bluntly, it was just going with the flow. Now, Noah felt that he shouldn't continue like this. Both Gaia and Alea had told Noah that Noah would understand everything one day if he wholeheartedly increased his strength. And now, Noah had already increased his strength to the point where he could be considered a peak existence even in this world where gods and Buddhas were everywhere and divine beasts were as numerous as dogs. Noah didn't know if this level of strength could reach Gaia and Alea's standards. However, Noah didn't want to wait any longer. After seeing that terrifying eye in his dream, Noah felt that it was time for him to move forward. Even an evil god like Dakaha had his own path and resolutely walked to the end without the slightest regret. As the person who defeated him, if I don't even know my own path, how can I have the face to claim that I defeated him? Noah said from the bottom of his heart as he extended his hand and unconsciously rubbed Letitia and Pest's little heads. So, no matter what, I have to take a step forward. Even if it's just a small step, it'll be fine. Noah's words allowed Letitia and Pest to clearly sense their master's determination. Although I don't know what Master is concerned about, I believe that Master's decision is correct, Letitia said sincerely. Since that's the case, we won't say anything else. Just because you don't have anything to say doesn't mean that I don't have anything to say, Pest retorted. She looked at Noah with a somewhat unreconciled gaze. I only want to ask, is there nothing I can help you with, no matter how small the matter is? Even if you ask, I don't know, Noah said with a wry smile. There are still many things that I don't understand. I'm also confused about what I should do. I don't even know what I should do. How am I supposed to ask you for help? At this moment, even Pest was at a loss for words. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness. For the sake of helping Pest fulfill her wish, Noah did not hesitate to revive the humans in the final trial. Furthermore, for the sake of not letting this decision lead to the sacrifice of a single person, he worked hard for an entire month. Pest had witnessed the entire process. Although she did not say anything, Pest's gratitude and gratitude toward Noah had accumulated to a point where it could explode at any moment. If possible, Pest only hoped that she would be able to help Noah. Now, it would appear that this wish of hers was nothing more than an extravagant hope. Seeing the extremely strong unwillingness in Pest's eyes, the bitter smile on Noah's face grew even stronger. He began to rub Pest's head with even more strength. He continued to rub Pest's head. What are you doing? Pest began to struggle in a flurry. Don't mess with my hair like that. Noah ignored Pest's protest and continued to rub Pest's hair. He even poured water on it and began to wash Pest's hair. Without giving Pest another chance to protest, Noah directly said, if you really want to help me, then help me. If you really want to help me, then work with Letitia and help me deal with the work of the Stratum Dominator. The work of the Stratum Ruler? Pest was startled. That's right. Noah nodded his head. His tone was somewhat gentle. I've said before, I also have my own matters that I need to take care of. However, that does not mean that I can ignore the matters of the people around me for the sake of my own matters. My companions and friends are also in this box. I do not wish to see any accidents happen to them, Noah said with a smile as he washed Pest's hair. Thus, during this period of time that I'm not around, I hope that the two of you can help me protect everything that I cherish. Hearing those words, Pest's struggling slowly stopped. She glared at Noah as if she was throwing a tantrum. Truly cunning. What? Noah chuckled. Why? Is that not the case? Pest muttered. Now that you've said it like that, I am unable to refuse. Who said that? Noah rolled his eyes. Am I the type of person who would force others to do something they are unwilling to do? That is why I said that you are very cunning. Pest said loudly. Since this is something that you want to do, how could I not be willing to do it? Noah was stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help but laugh. In that case, are you willing to help me? My adorable little maid? I am not your maid. I am only your subordinate. Pest turned her head away. However, since this is master's order, I can only obey. Truly not frank, Letitia smiled sweetly. However, I feel the same way as Pest. Since this is something that master treasures, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we will help you protect it. Then it's settled, Noah immediately said. Letitia, Pest, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, the two of you must protect the things that I cherish. Letitia and Pest both had serious expressions on their faces as they nodded their heads heavily. In the next moment, Noah suddenly extended his hands and embraced Letitia and Pest. Also, don't forget that the two of you are also things that I cherish. The two of you must sacrifice your lives to properly protect yourselves. Those words caused Letitia and Pest's hearts to warm up. Lying in Noah's embrace, they nodded their heads heavily again. Chapter 16:21. After deciding to leave, Noah did not immediately return to the world between worlds. Instead, he stayed in a box court for 3 days. The 3 days were mainly to transfer the affairs of the Stratum ruler to Letitia and announce it to the entire East District. After all, after Noah left this world, a month would have passed in this world. A month's time was neither too long nor too short. However, if the entire East District lost the Stratum ruler for a month, it would be a complete mess. If the matter of Letitia taking over the Stratum ruler's affairs was not announced, it would cause a lot of trouble for Letitia when she was in power. Thus, the necessary things had to be done and could not be omitted. Fortunately, Letitia used to be the royal family of the vampire clan that protected the order of the entire box court. She had also held the position of Stratum ruler with full power, so she was not unfamiliar with the position of Stratum ruler. Otherwise, in just 3 days, it would be really difficult to transfer all the affairs to Letitia. No matter what, the matter of transferring was done smoothly. As for the matter of Letitia taking over the Stratum ruler's affairs, no one had any objections. Firstly, Letitia was indeed not unfamiliar with the position of Stratum ruler. Secondly, even without considering the issue of profession compatibility, Letitia herself had a 4-digit battle power. It was enough to protect the East District of the box court. At the very least, Letitia still had the sun's sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation. Once she used the sun's sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation, then, unless it was a 3-digit battle power, there would not be a single 4-digit battle power that could guarantee that they could defeat Letitia. Moreover, Letitia also had the support of Pest, who was also in the 4 digits. Noah had also contacted Jiao Lu and Jiaoling, asking the 2 monster kings to lend a hand when necessary. No matter what, it was impossible for the Eastern District to fall into enemy hands in a short month. After doing all this, Noah finally felt relieved and made a decision. The next day, he left the box court. Unfortunately, this decision on the second day was directly inserted into an episode that could not be ignored. In the headquarters of No Name, Noah was holding a letter in his hand. He looked like he had just swallowed a fly. He had a bitter expression on his face. Normally, if there weren't any important activities, the members of the community would gather in this room at this time to improve their relationship and decide the content of the day's activities. But today, when Noah came here, he didn't see a single person. He only found this letter on the table. The contents of the letter were as follows. Your companions in the community are being held hostage by us. If you want to save them, come here. On the letter, other than this sentence, there was a map drawn everywhere else. Noah easily recognized it. It was the map of No Name's base. At the corner of the map, there was an arrow. That was the place the kidnapper wanted to go to, right? Holding the letter, Noah stared blankly for a long time. After a long time, he squeezed out a sentence. What the hell? Don't blame Noah for not feeling nervous. It was just that this letter was a little strange. If he thought about it carefully, he would understand. First of all, why would the other party know the detailed terrain of No Name's base and draw it out? Secondly, why would the kidnapper want to negotiate in No Name's territory? Lastly, if this letter was real, why did Noah not feel anything out of the ordinary? The No Name of today was no longer the No Name of the past. Any random 7-digit tiger man could kidnap a bunch of people. Putting aside the fact that Letitia and Pest were both 4-digit existences, 16 Nights, Flying Bird, Radiance, and Black Rabbit were also not easy to deal with. Who would have the ability to kidnap these people without causing any commotion? At least, from Noah's point of view, unless it was someone like the Queen of All Saints who could control realms, and someone with at least a 3-digit number, only then would they have the ability to do this. Otherwise, even if it was an extremely secretive gift or the organizer's authority, it would still be impossible to do this without Noah noticing. Thinking about it this way, Noah could roughly guess who the kidnapper was. Those problematic children. Noah had a headache as he crushed the letter in his hand. Then, with a bitter expression, he turned around and walked out of the meeting room. Whoosh! A light breeze blew through the entire No Name's base, causing the rice in the farmland to sway like a young girl with her hair. At a glance, the entire vast land was evenly divided into pieces and crops were planted there. The scene that entered one's eyes were fields full of vitality. No one would be willing to believe it, right? Just 2 months ago, the land here was a lifeless wilderness. It was simply like a ruin, unbearable to look at. After a period of reclamation and development, the land belonging to No Name had recovered its vitality. Although it would still take some time to recover to the same level of prosperity as 3 years ago, looking at the fields full of vitality, no one would think that it was impossible. Noah walked among the fields, following the map drawn on the letter, and walked forward. Not long after, Noah arrived at the edge of No Name's base. There was still no time to develop this place. Therefore, unlike the fields that were full of vitality, the nearby land was still as deserted as before. Noah walked into this deserted area and immediately saw it. In front of him, 3 young boys and girls were standing side by side in a row. They put on an impressive posture and looked in the direction of Noah. Yo! 16th Night revealed an insufferably arrogant smile. You're finally here. Although there's no time attached, it's not a good habit to make a virtuous girl wait. Flying Bird stretched out her hand and brushed her long hair. If you still didn't come, we were going to kill the hostages. Kill the hostages? Yao blinked his eyes, as if he didn't know there was such a setting. Soon after, he reacted and nodded with a solemn expression. That's right, we're going to kill the hostages. Seeing the 3 problematic children speaking with an evil tone, as if they had discussed this from the very beginning, the corners of Noah's eyes twitched. Especially when he saw the 3 problematic children, Noah became even more speechless. Beside the 3 problem children were Letitia, Pest, and Run. The 3 of them had their backs against each other. They were tied together by a rope. I'm sorry, Master. Letitia lowered her head as if she was too ashamed to see anyone. I never thought that these problematic children would actually do such a thing. Who would have thought that our companions in the community would suddenly launch a sneak attack and knock us unconscious? Pest was furious. Furthermore, exactly what is going on with this rope? Why are we unable to break free from it? That's a tool capable of nullifying a bestowment, Ren explained helplessly. Furthermore, it's a reward given to me by Lord White Yiksha after Mr. Noah won against him yesterday. In other words, the 3 problematic children had used the spoils of war that Noah had won to carry out this kidnapping plan. Of course, Letitia, Pest, and Ren's condition could still be considered good. What truly caused Noah to ridicule them was the fact that there was another person tied up before the 3 of them. Woo 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 woo. Black Rabbit was sobbing as tears flowed down from his eyes. It wasn't that Black Rabbit didn't want to speak. Rather, there was a piece of rag stuffed into his mouth. His entire body was tied up like a rice dumpling. Like a caterpillar, he was struggling nonstop on the ground. Seeing this scene, Noah covered his face. At this moment, Noah was even able to understand the sorrowful cries in Black Rabbit's heart. "Why must you treat me like this?" Black Rabbit's tear-streaked face was all telling this sentence. Chapter 16:22. In the air, an indescribable atmosphere was spreading. That atmosphere, if one were to say it was heavy, then it was somewhat comical. If one were to say it was comical, then there were some parts that were hard to agree with. It could only be said that it was very subtle. Noah could only look at the three problem children, 16 Knights, Flying Bird, and Yao, who were acting like villains. After holding back for a long time, he pointed at Black Rabbit, who was tied up like a big dumpling, and squeezed out such a sentence. "Speaking of which, why do you treat Black Rabbit differently?" As if the words in her heart were spoken, Black Rabbit, with tears in her eyes, kept nodding her head. However, 16th Knight, Fei Yao, and Yao seemed to be surprised. They first glanced at the Black Rabbit that was rolling on the ground like a caterpillar before exchanging glances with each other. In the end, they looked at Noah in unison. Because it's fun? Because it's easy to use? Because it's easy to bully? The three uncertain answers made the corner of Noah's mouth twitch fiercely. Black Rabbit was stunned, as if it had been hit by a stick. After a while, tears flowed down its face with a crashing sound. Obviously, 16 Knights, Flying Bird, and Yao only subconsciously bullied Black Rabbit and didn't think that they had done something that treated her differently. Poor Black Rabbit. Undoubtedly, as a young girl, she was very charming in all aspects, but she became the pastime of these three problem children. No wonder even Jia Ling, who met Black Rabbit for the first time, said that she was a toy of Buddhism and Sakura. The atmosphere of remnant thoughts was probably like a curse that surrounded Black Rabbit's body. Forget it. If I care about the details, I feel like I've lost. Noah forced himself to accept this situation and questioned the three problem children. Then, please tell me, what is the purpose of doing this? Noah's words made the three problem children raise their eyebrows. I say, little brother, do you really not understand, or are you pretending not to understand? A frivolous smile appeared on 16 Knight's face. Like a delinquent, he raised his fingers. We're doing this, of course, to repay our previous debt. Previous debt? Noah's face was full of innocence. What debt do I owe you? Don't tell me you forgot, Noah. Fei Yao pointed at Noah and shouted loudly. No matter if it's me, Saga Cookie-san, or Saga Cookie-san, we've all been taught a lesson by you. Noah was really confused. 16 Knights could still be counted as fixing, but since when did Noah fix Flying Bird and Yao? Wasn't this framing him? As a result, Yao seemed to have seen through Noah's doubts and puffed up his cheeks. Have you forgotten? How did you treat me and Fei Yao during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony? After being reminded by Yao, Noah finally remembered. Back then, during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, Noah had indeed briefly fought with Fei Yao and Yao. Have you finally remembered? Fei Yao teased. At that time, you even spanked Haruai classmates, but with one sentence, the already subtle atmosphere in the air directly became awkward. Fei Yao. Yao's face was slightly red as he puffed up his cheeks and kept hitting Fei Yao's back with his small fists. So painful. Okay. I won't say anymore. Stop hitting me. Fei Yao quickly dodged Yao's small fists as if she really felt the pain. After all, Fei Yao's body was just an ordinary girl. Even if it was just a light hit, it would still hurt. Now, do you know what's going on? 16 Knights ignored Fei Yao and Yao's quarrel and grinned at Noah. We're here to repay the debt you owe us. So you're saying that you kidnapped me just to challenge me? Noah was really puzzled. If that's the case, can't you just tell me directly? After hearing Noah's words, 16 Knights, Fei Yao, and Yao said in unison, No, that's not interesting at all. Noah almost couldn't catch his breath in time. At this moment, Noah felt incomparably stifled. Even Noah was in such a state. He was reduced to 3 problematic children who had only been attacked because of the interesting angle. Letitia, Pest, Ren, and Black Rabbit were all tied up and had their hands tied behind their backs. Needless to say, Letitia, Pest, Ren, and Black Rabbit were all extremely sullen. All in all, that's it, Fei Niao coughed and pretended to say. Noah, if you want to save your people, then you have to accept our challenge. Then, let me ask first. Noah let out a big sigh and said bluntly, you can't be thinking that the 3 of you can win against me just by joining hands, right? Ugh. Yao immediately muttered. How arrogant. It wasn't just Yao. Even 16 Knights and Fei Niao also wanted to vent their anger, but couldn't refute. That was only natural. In terms of combat strength, even if the 3 problem children were all tied up together, they still wouldn't be able to win against Noah. It wasn't that 16 Knights, Fei Niao, and Yao were too weak. It was just that Noah broke the rules too much. 16 Knights, the truth is unknown, possessed 2 abilities that were outside of the norm. The gift of shattering heaven and earth and the power of shattering gift. Her combat power was ranked in the 4 digits. Even though she was not as strong as Letitia, she was on par with Pest. Fei Niao's Light of Might could bestow a simulated godhead to the target, raising the target's spirit lattice to the maximum. As long as he had enough blessings, the combat strength he could unleash would not be below 16 Knights. Yao's life catalog could even obtain the spirit lattice of all beasts. He could obtain the blessings of wild beasts, illusion beasts, and even divine beasts. If he used it well, he could practically possess the abilities of all beasts. These 3 blessings were all considered by Black Rabbit to be the highest level of human existence. One could imagine how high the potential of these 3 blessings were. And in the successive battles against absolute evil and closed world, the potential of Fei Niao and Yao had already begun to sprout. In order to ensure that Fei Niao's blessings could fully unleash its potential, during the expedition against closed world, as an ally, a Wisp helped Fei Niao create several high-level blessings, raising Fei Niao's combat strength by several levels in one go. The true value of Yao's life catalog was also unearthed. Noah also only found out about it not long ago. In fact, the true effect of Yao's life catalog was that he could collect information from all life forms. He could take samples from the system tree's catalog and then proceed with evolution and synthesis, imitating the power of all life forms. This blessings could even imitate the power of the strongest species and turn the imitated power into a weapon to carry out a higher level of application. As long as he had this blessings, no matter how unreasonable the game was, the user would be able to respond to all situations and obtain the corresponding blessings. After knowing the true ability of the life catalog, Noah immediately thought of something. Gate of Babylon. Yao's life catalog was simply another type of Gate of Babylon. However, when Yao used more blessings than the total amount of spirit stored in the life catalog, in order to protect the user, the blessings would temporarily stop functioning. And if he imitated the power of the strongest species, not only could he only use it for a short period of time, in the following period of time, Yao's life catalog would also lose its effect. It would not be until a month later that the spirit would be completely restored. To put it bluntly, today, the 3 problem children all had 4-digit levels of power. But even so, it was still impossible to beat Noah. The 3 problem children naturally felt unreconciled, but it was not to the point of not admitting it. So, in order to make our revenge meaningful, you should accept our game. Accompanied by the declaration of the 3 problem children, a contract flashed in the air and floated down, falling into Noah's hands. Gift game name: Alternating Attack and Defense Revenge Match. Only victory condition. Hit the opponent's body. Only defeat condition, when the contestant is unable to achieve the above victory conditions. First game rule: alternating attack and defense. The opponent reduced to the defensive side can only dodge and cannot attack. Second game rule: every 3 minutes, alternating attack and defense will take place. After 3 minutes, the attacking side and the defending side will exchange. Third game rule: All contestants will be divided into two camps, black and white. Alternating attack and defense will take place between the two camps. Contestants of the same camp will share victory and defeat conditions. If one person wins or loses, the group wins or loses. Fourth game rule. In the first 3 minutes, the attacking side must be the side with more people. Black camp contestant, Noah Doria. White camp contestant, 16 Knights Reversal, Gun Fei Niao, Kasuga Hikari. Oath. Respect the above content based on glory and flag, and the name of the organizer. Host the gift game. No name seal. What? Looking at the contract in his hand, Noah could not help but let out a shocked voice. Bang! At this moment, along with the sound of an explosion, a figure shot toward Noah's direction. Chapter 16:23. Bang! 16 Knights' figure turned into a rocket accompanied by the sound of the ground exploding. With the terrifying speed known as the Third Universe's speed, he instantly shot towards Noah and flashed in front of Noah. The game has begun. Bro, stop daydreaming. With an arrogant laugh, 16th Knight raised a fist, and with a sonic boom in the air, he threw a punch at Noah's chest. 16 Knights didn't hold back at all in this punch. His fist, which was strong enough to shatter mountains and rivers, was blasted towards Noah's chest with a shocking explosion. Undoubtedly, the winning condition was to hit the opponent's body, but 16 Knights used all of his strength in this fight. Obviously, 16 Knights clearly knew that if he held back, he wouldn't be able to win in this game, where he had the advantage. It was this awareness that made Noah subconsciously enter battle mode. However, at that moment, Noah, who was on the defensive, was simply unable to attack at all. He could only dodge. Facing 16 Knights' earth-shattering punch, Noah's methods were already on the verge of being revealed. Fear those with wings. Both the evil and the powerful fear me because of my wings. My wings will bring you a curse. The evil cannot hit me. In the depths of Noah's heart, the stone plate with 10 patterns on its outline suddenly turned and pointed to the phoenix. In the next instant, Noah's entire body transformed into a mirage-like phantom. Along with a string of light and shadow, he disappeared on the spot. Bang! The fist, which was strong enough to shatter mountains and rivers and split the sea, exploded the afterimage Noah had left behind. The afterimage was like a piece of glass, and it burst apart. This scene didn't surprise 16 Knights. Instead, it made 16 Knights reveal an expression of as expected, and he shouted. Kasuga tribe. Yao, who was waiting in place, immediately reached out his hand and tightly grasped the pendant hanging in front of him. Vital catalog. Shape Makesius. The life catalog on Yao's neck suddenly blossomed with a bright light. Under the light, the round wooden sculpture slowly twisted and turned into a dazzling radiance, covering Yao's feet. When the light faded away, a pair of steel boots appeared on Yao's feet. It was a pair of combat boots with tips as sharp as the claws of ferocious beasts and decorations that resembled the feathers of griffins. Clang! The boots landed on the ground, producing a powerful sound of metal clashing. Yao, who was wearing a pair of ferocious war boots, slowly closed his eyes. After a while, Yao suddenly opened his eyes, turned his head, and looked in a certain direction. Over there. As soon as he finished speaking, Yao spun around and launched a roundhouse kick in the air. As Yao spun around, a black flame burst out from the pair of terrifying boots under his feet. Under Yao's roundhouse kick, it turned into a fire wheel, whistling through the space. With a chi sound, it shot forward while spinning. Almost at the same time, Noah's figure appeared out of thin air. The place where he appeared was the direction where the black fire wheel came from. The terrible heat rushed towards Noah's body. Noah hurriedly stomped on the ground, shattering it. At the same time, he retreated like a bullet fired from a gun. Bang! The black fire wheel suddenly fell on Noah's previous position, and the ground that was crushed by Noah exploded, setting off a scorching fire and a strong shock wave, blowing in all directions. In the storm, Noah's figure rushed out, and even a wisp of smoke came out from his body. He landed on the edge of the fire and was speechless. So that's how it is. Did you predict my position? Mekhiges. He was the 35th demon god of Solomon's 72 demon god pillars, a marquis who commanded 30 legions, and a powerful warrior. However, Mekhiges was not a demon, but a phantasmal beast. Moreover, he was known as the third fantasy breed. He looked like a wolf, but at the same time, he had the wings of a griffin and the tail of a snake. By changing the shape of the life catalog and turning it into a weapon, Yao obtained the gift of the third fantasy breed, named Mekhiges. There were two kinds of gifts for Mekhiges. One was a demonic flame comparable to the flames of hell. The other was the ability to foresee the future a few seconds later. Wearing the pair of boots, Yao predicted Noah's position a few seconds later and released an attack there. Therefore, Noah, who entered the world of Godspeed, was directly forced to exit the Godspeed state, which allowed him to narrowly avoid Yao's attack. Just like how you know about our grace ability, we also know about your authority ability. Looking at Noah's speechless expression, Yao proudly puffed out his chest. Your seraphic speed authority doesn't increase speed, nor does it shorten distance. Instead, it shortens the time needed to move by manipulating time. It's like a space jump. It's a very high-level ability. However, if I can predict your position, then it won't be a problem. If Noah could attack, relying on the ability of the Phoenix to shorten the time needed to move, Noah could win with a terrifying speed that no one could react to. Unfortunately, Noah was now on the defensive side and could not attack at all. He could only rely on his god's speed to move. In that case, Dazzling Maxias would be able to predict Noah's location and calmly launch an attack. If Noah could attack, we might have lost immediately. However, Noah is now on the defensive side. For the next 3 minutes, it's completely our home ground. Yao made a declaration in high spirits, which was rare for him to do. Within 3 minutes, we will hit you and win. In other words, if the three problem children could not win in 3 minutes, then when Noah switched to the offensive side, it would be their defeat. Whoosh! While he spoke, a figure shot over like a rocket, accompanied by a low and deep air explosion sound. In an instant, he appeared in front of Noah. The person who could have such speed was naturally 16 Knights. Without much time to think, Noah's eyes flashed with a fierce light. He suddenly lifted his foot and stomped heavily on the ground. The powerful force directly shook the hard ground into powder, setting off a burst of wind and sand, which covered Noah's body. TSK. You still have this move. 16 Knights, who was preparing to throw a punch, was hit by the sudden burst of wind and sand, but his body did not stop at all. He directly rushed into the wind and sand, and his figure also disappeared inside. However, just as 16 Knights' figure rushed into the wind and sand, a figure rushed out from another direction like lightning. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and he quickly retreated like a rabbit. However, in the next second, Noah, who was rushing over, raised his head and looked at the sky. There, a figure was suspended there. Impressively, it was Yao, who used the griffin's whirlwind favor. Hey! Yao let out an extremely imposing shout, and with a spin of her body, she suddenly rolled up a whirlwind mixed with pitch-black devil flames. It shook the atmosphere, and the pitch-black flame whirlwind was like a drill that broke through the sky, sweeping towards Noah's direction. Looking at the pitch-black flaming whirlwind descending from the sky, Noah stopped in his tracks and dodged, hiding behind a huge rock at the side. The pitch-black flame whirlwind fell from the sky heavily on the huge rock, and the huge rock suddenly exploded, exploding into thick dust that spread on the ground. Like a fog, it shrouded the space with a diameter of a few hundred meters. Cough, cough, cough. In the thick dust, Noah rushed out with a dusty face. He coughed and smiled bitterly. That group of problem children, they actually made me so embarrassed. As soon as this sentence fell, an unruly laughter rang out. Unfortunately, little brother, we planned for so long not just to make you embarrassed, but to defeat you. As soon as the voice fell, clang, A burst of extremely dazzling starlight bloomed. Chapter 16:24. Clang. An extremely dazzling light shone from No Name's base, illuminating the entire space. Under the shroud of the dazzling light, everything was dyed a gorgeous white, so dazzling that it was difficult to describe. And in the center of the dazzling light, 16 Knights smiled, his eyes flashing with a dazzling light, and raised his right arm in the direction of Noah. On his right hand, an aurora shone like a star map, and the dazzling light poured out in all directions like a tide. Seeing this scene happen with his own eyes, Noah's heart shook. A surprised expression finally appeared on his face. Because at this moment in Noah's heart, there was an extremely strong sense of crisis. So Noah understood. That light, that gift, it can't be... You finally found it? The corners of 16th Knight's mouth curled up slightly, as the dazzling light in his eyes became even more intense. I only found out what the true form of this power was after I came to this box. Moreover, I was inspired by you, little brother. So, little brother, if you don't take this seriously, don't blame me when you die. Die. That was not an exaggeration. At least Noah knew. If he couldn't take the light from 16 Knight's hand, then he might really die. Even if the many gods in the heaven realm were here, perhaps they would believe it without a doubt and would feel shocked, because no one would think that the power that could only be used by a person who had the ability to become the center of a group of gods would actually appear in the body of a second human. Yes, this is my biggest trump card, 16 Knights declared loudly. The hero of the final trial who crusade against absolute evil and closed world. Take my another cosmology and try it out. The aurora, shining in 16 Knights' hand, suddenly converged into a beam. Wong, accompanied by the sound of space trembling, the divine aurora that covered the entire space like a tidal wave suddenly turned into an aurora pillar that pierced through the heavens and the earth. It rubbed against the air and cut across the sky, shooting toward Noah's direction. Wherever the aurora pillar passed, the ground was dug up without any suspense. The soil and rocks did not even have a chance to come into contact with the atmosphere, and directly evaporated without leaving a trace. At this moment, space was distorted, the atmosphere was twisted, and even the light of the stars was ruthlessly overtaken, annihilated in the holy aurora, disappearing without a trace. Therefore, in this world, there is nothing more dazzling than the holy aurora. Noah's vision had long been filled with the dazzling aurora. In such a situation, Noah, on the contrary, calmed down. And this was the evidence that Noah was serious. With intuition, Noah knew. At this time, the aurora that 16 Knights wielded was the strongest attack that could even penetrate the sky and shatter the stars. In the face of that strongest attack, even Noah only had two ways to deal with it. 1. Using more than 4 avatars at the same time, with the same power that was more than 3 digits above the box. Only then could it be possible to block it. 2. Using the same trump card to counterattack. However, 3 minutes had not passed, and Noah could not attack. Then, I can only offset it. The another cosmology, named Avesta, had no way to imitate the human's cosmology. However, if it was also another cosmology, then there was no problem at all. This was because another cosmology was an independent cosmology to begin with. Even if the user was a human, it could still be imitated. Clang! Noah's whole body suddenly bloomed with the same dazzling starlight, illuminating the entire sky. Activate Avesta, counteracted in turn, simulating another cosmology. At this moment, the starlight that bloomed from Noah's body directly suppressed the surrounding aurora, becoming the second color between heaven and earth. Just like that, the starlight skyrocketed and rushed straight to the sky, instantly enveloping the entire space. Like a vortex of light, it suddenly appeared in a corner of No Name's base. Then, the towering aurora pillar carried a terrifying power that even shook the space, violently swept over like lightning, colliding with a dazzling vortex of light with a loud bang. Rumble! Amidst the earth-shattering noise, the aurora pillar and the vortex of light collided with a loud bang, stirring up a terrifying energy storm. From the point of collision, the shock wave spread out like lightning. The scene that resembled the explosion of a star caused the surrounding ground to crack inch by inch and collapse one after another. It was like a hurricane that spanned across the heavens and the earth. Everywhere it passed, the temperature between the heavens and the earth would suddenly rise, causing the entire atmosphere to become violent. It shook the space and set off waves of ripples. This was just the aftermath. Just the aftermath of the collision between the two simulated star atlas, another cosmology, turned the surrounding area into hell. Everything was annihilated into powder and completely disappeared. If 16th Nights, another cosmology, was allowed to land on the land of no name, then not to mention the surrounding area, perhaps the entire outer gate of 210-5380 would completely disappear, right? Such a terrifying power caused the terrifying energy storm's aftermath to fiercely shake Noah's body. Boom! There was a muffled sound that caused one's heart to shrink. Noah's body was like a kite with a broken string. He flew backwards and smashed violently onto the ground. After rubbing against the ground for a distance of several hundred meters, he slowly came to a stop. However, upon closer inspection, Noah did not land on his back, but his feet rubbed against the ground, and he was fiercely sent flying. As for his body, he did not suffer any injuries. After all, with the power of Avesta, the power of the pillar of light that penetrated the heavens and the earth would be offset. Even if such a terrifying aftermath was produced, just the aftermath alone would not be able to injure the current Noah. Of course, Noah still felt a tightness in his chest, and his body stiffened for an extremely short period of time. This momentary stiffening caused the scales of victory to tip. Boom! Without any warning, the ground behind Noah suddenly exploded, filling the sky with dirt and gravel. Immediately, a steel sphere rushed out from the ground. From a steel sphere that suddenly broke out of the ground, a delicate shout sounded. Alma, remove the defense. As soon as the delicate shout sounded, another voice suddenly sounded. Understood. The ice-cold steel sphere suddenly wriggled like a wave and flashed with electricity, suddenly changing its form. Not long after, a mountain goat with majestic horns, strong and powerful limbs, and silver fur appeared in the air. Its entire body was bursting with electricity. And on the back of the mountain goat that was bursting with electricity, a young girl was riding on it. It was Flying Bird. With his superb sensing ability, Noah was clearly aware of the movement behind him. He forcefully whipped his body and suddenly turned around. Just as Noah was about to dodge, Fei Niao, who was riding on the goat's back, let out a delicate cry. Without any hesitation, she leaped down towards Noah, who was below. That scene was simply like a young girl who was about to commit suicide by jumping off a cliff, without any protection at all. If Flying Bird was allowed to fall like this young girl, who was no different from an ordinary person in terms of physical ability, would definitely end up with injuries all over her body. At this moment, Noah's face could not help but show a sluggish expression, and hurriedly reached out his hand, subconsciously catching the falling Flying Bird. Thus, the outcome was revealed. Flying Bird reached out a hand and patted Noah's shoulder. A contract flashed and floated down from the air. Chapter 16:25. Silence. There was a deathly silence. Noah looked at the contract document that floated down from midair, and his face was full of shock, because, on the contract document, it was marked with such content. The contestant from the white camp has reached the winning condition. The game is over. In other words, Noah lost. Even Flying Bird seemed to not believe this result. Ignoring the fact that Noah was carrying her in his arms, she turned her head and asked the goat with uncertainty, "Did we succeed, Alma?" The goat that Flying Bird called Alma nodded and spoke in human language. "Yes, you succeeded, my master. Congratulations on winning against the hero who could single-handedly defeat absolute evil, and closed world in the final trial. Really succeeded? Flying Bird was overjoyed and cheered. That's great. Looking at Flying Bird, who was cheering in his arms, Noah opened and closed his mouth several times, but he couldn't say a word. In the end, Noah could only say this: "Aren't you guys too despicable?" Despicable? Flying Bird stopped cheering and stared at Noah. "I can't pretend that I didn't hear that. How are we despicable?" Noah couldn't say anything for a while. After all, in the game of gifts, using wisdom is a very important part. The three problem children first launched a surprise attack on Noah, letting Noah, who was on the defense, use the Phoenix incarnation to dodge. Then, they let Yao use the gift of Maximus to seal Noah's speed. Then, they let 16 Knights use the Another Cosmology to force out Noah's trump card, forcing Noah to be on the defense. Then, Flying Bird relied on its new gift to survive the aftermath of the collision between the two simulated star atlas, Another Cosmology. It then hid underground and waited for Noah to reveal a flaw before launching a surprise attack. If at that time, Flying Bird launched an attack on Noah, then Noah, with his superb sensing ability, would definitely react in time and dodge. However, Flying Bird didn't launch an attack. Instead, she risked her own injury and took a gamble. She gambled on whether Noah would choose to catch Flying Bird, knowing that she would be injured. In the end, using Noah's gentleness, Flying Bird won. It sounded despicable, but skillfully using the opponent's weakness was also a very important method in the game of gifts. In this game, Noah's weakness was that he was too gentle. He couldn't sit and watch Flying Bird get injured, which was why he was checkmated. Therefore, from the perspective of the game, no one would see this method as despicable. Otherwise, Flying Bird, with her extremely high self-esteem, would definitely not use this method. Could it be that the famous human hero thinks that the three of us working together is despicable? Flying Bird said provocatively. But before the battle began, undoubtedly, a certain person swore that even if the three of us worked together, we still wouldn't be able to beat you, right? Your Excellency Noah, this time it is indeed your loss. Alma also said the same thing. Here, it's better to admit it honestly. Noah was speechless and could only look at the goat-like divine beast in front of him. Almaty, that was the name of this goat-like divine beast. Almatia was once the goddess of fertility who nurtured the young Greek god Zeus. The god of forging, Hephaestus, once used the fur of this goat-like goddess of fertility to create a divine shield for Zeus and Athena. Those two divine shields were both named Aegis. Yes, the famous Aegis shield was made from the fur of this goddess of fertility. However, this goddess had already fallen once. Her fur, after a few twists and turns, fell into the hands of No Name, who was still at his peak 3 years ago and had been preserved until now, because they considered that even though Flying Bird had a powerful gift, she didn't have a way to protect herself. Therefore, after some discussion, the people of No Name found Almadia's fur and asked Willow's Wisp to create a new gift. With the assistance of Vera, who could control the realm of life and death, and with the addition of a precious mineral called adamantine, the former goddess of fertility was reincarnated into a divine beast and made a contract with Flying Bird. It must be known that adamantine was comparable to divine precious iron, and it was a mineral with a high tolerance for gifts. Many of the bestowment weapons that were made to imitate Godhead weapons were made from such precious minerals. Therefore, after the fur was covered with adamantine, Almaty could transform into the strongest shield of the Greek gods, Aegis, which could block all attacks at any time. However, if Almaty wanted to transform into the divine shield Aegis, she must have the divine artifact of the sky. However, because of Almadia's reincarnation, she had already lost her divine artifact and divinity. For that reason, if Flying Bird wished to use the defensive ability of the Aegis divine shield, she would have to feed Almatia 4 orbs that were imbued with a simulated divine spark. Only then would Almatia be able to temporarily retrieve her original divine spark. Although there were restrictions, With this divine shield, Flying Bird had the defensive ability of a battle fortress, and she didn't have to worry about her own safety. It was because of this gift that Flying Bird was able to survive the aftermath of the collision between the two simulated star atlas, another cosmology, and hide underground, right? All right, Noah could only say helplessly. This time, I have indeed lost. Flying Bird then revealed a victorious smile, and immediately after, her face turned red as she bashfully stood up. If that's the case, then hurry up and put me down. Noah smiled bitterly as he put Flying Bird down. Then, he suddenly thought of something and was suddenly shocked. Not good. How are the others? The collision of the two, another cosmology, had completely razed the surrounding area to the ground. Looking up, the surrounding land that was originally abandoned was now completely destroyed and turned into scorched earth. Under such circumstances, if Flying Bird could rely on Almadia's defense to escape, then what about the others? As soon as this thought appeared in Noah's mind, a humorous laugh rang out. "Aha! Your companions are here." As the voice fell, a few figures appeared out of thin air, directly flashing out of space. Impressively, it was the group of No Name. In addition, there was also Vera, Jack, and AI Xia. Wah! AI Xia looked at the scorched earth around her and let out a gasp of surprise. It's actually become so serious. That's right. Vera had a dumbfounded expression. So powerful. It's only a game. You all are too reckless. Jack let out a rare, bitter smile. If it wasn't for Vera's spatial jump, everyone would be in a miserable state. It's precisely because we wanted you all to save the situation that we had you all hide at the side, right? 16th Knights patted the dust on his body, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. In the end, just like the plan, we obtained victory. Flying Bird. Yao walked toward Flying Bird and extended his hand. High five. Flying Bird happily high-fived Yao, sharing the victory of the game. Only Letitia, Pest, Rin, and Black Rabbit were speechless as they looked at their surroundings that had been razed to the ground and revealed sorrowful expressions. Now, who knows how much time we'll have to spend to restore the land here? Letitia, spare me. I'm already angry enough. Pest, if you think about it carefully, this area will have to be rebuilt sooner or later anyway. Now that it's like this, it's much easier. Run, Blue. Black Rabbit still stuffed in his mouth. At this moment, 16th Knights arrived before Noah and looked straight at Noah. Do you see now? Even if we are far from being a match for you in a head-on battle, it's not like we have no chance of winning in a game. After saying those words, 16th Knights scratched his head in a somewhat embarrassed manner. Then, as if giving up, he spoke. Thus, you could do whatever you want to do. Even if you're not here in the East District, there's still us. Hearing those words, Noah was finally stunned. At this moment, no matter how slow Noah was, he should have realized what was going on. Although these three problem children were talking about revenge, they were actually using this game to tell Noah one thing. That was, even if Noah was not here, they would still do their best to protect the East District. It's not like we've been stagnant all this time. It's just as you've seen. Right now, all of us have sufficient battle strength to deal with any situation, Flying Bird said with great confidence. Since that's the case, what else do you have to worry about? Don't worry, Yao nodded at Noah. There's still us here. Letitia, Pest, Rin, Black Rabbit, Vera, Jack, Aisha, and the others all looked at Noah. Their eyes revealed the same expression as the three problem children, gentle and serious. Looking at his companions, Noah's eyes flickered. After a long while, he finally laughed heartily. Then, I'll leave it to you all. Everyone nodded in agreement. Only then did the unique farewell ceremony come to an end. Noah left this world with a peace of mind. Chapter 16:26. When Noah opened his eyes again, the usual pure white space appeared in front of him. Feeling the comfortable feeling as if he had returned to his mother's body, Noah's mood was more or less complicated. Whoa! And as if seeing through the complicated feelings in Noah's heart, in the pure white world, Pieces of feathers emitting a soft, white light flew around Noah like little birds and began to circle around Noah. That was a scene that often happened in the past. Looking at the pieces of feathers that were constantly circling around him, Noah's mood was unexpectedly comforted, and he raised one hand. The pieces of feathers were immediately attracted to Noah like white pigeons that were attracted by food, and they all flew to Noah's slowly raised hand and gathered on it. As if there was a gust of wind blowing, the pieces of feathers danced up and down. In the pure white world, the scene of the young man playing with the feathers fluttering in the air gave people a very warm feeling. This feeling also penetrated into Noah's heart. Therefore, Noah finally seemed to have made up his mind, and he waved his hand to disperse the pieces of feathers that had gathered. Then, Noah raised his head and looked above the pure white world, his dark and deep eyes flashing with a strange light. Back then, when Noah used the sovereignty of the 24 suns to try to draw out the possibility in his body, in his dream, he could not help but continue to rise in this world. In the end, he saw the crimson sky. Then, in reality, does the crimson sky also exist? If it does, is there something in the crimson sky that has been troubling Noah all this time? What kind of existence are those things? At the thought of this, Noah's heart flashed with extreme hesitation, and even his expression became a little uncertain. Phew! After an unknown period of time, Noah let out a sigh of relief, and a determined emotion appeared in his eyes. Fly! After issuing an order to the feather necklace on his neck, Noah's body became light as a feather. The outline of his body seemed to be wrapped in a layer of dim light as he floated into the air. Immediately after, Noah controlled his body and flew towards the top of the pure white world. Noah did not know that below him, the feathers flying back and forth seemed to have been stimulated, trembling back and forth, falling into a commotion. Noah did not have the time to notice this scene. His body had already risen to a certain height, and he could no longer see the fluttering feathers as he soared into the sky. Noah didn't know how long he had been flying. In the space between worlds, there was no concept of time or space. He couldn't even feel how high he was flying. If this was a normal world, Noah would be able to judge based on the strength of the wind and the thinness of the air. However, in the space between worlds, there was no wind and no air, and it was impossible for life to survive. Only Noah could inconceivably move around in the space between worlds. Undoubtedly, in a normal world, Noah also needed air, and he also needed all the living conditions that a human needs. However, in the space between worlds, all of this seemed to have nothing to do with him, and Noah could move freely. However, all this time, Noah had not moved much in the space between worlds. At best, he used the space between worlds as a world transfer station and carried out world transfers. This was the first time that Noah carried out his own activities in the space between worlds. Therefore, Noah did not know how high he had flown, nor did he know how long he had been flying. Noah only knew that when he flew to a certain height, his heart inexplicably had the thought of retreating. That kind of thought, like a shadow, could not help but blind his heart. With this kind of shadow, at a certain moment, Noah seemed to feel something and raised his head, looking up. In the next second, Noah's eyes suddenly froze, and his body suddenly stopped. Clang! He saw that above the pure white world, a crimson sky was imprinted there, emitting a blood-like light. Staring at the crimson sky above, Noah's fists unconsciously began to clench tightly. Sure enough, it exists. In the dream, Noah did not observe it clearly. Now, Noah could clearly see that the crimson sky, rather than calling it a sky, was more like a strange space. The surrounding was pure white in all directions, and only that space with a diameter of more than a few thousand meters was crimson red. That crimson space made the shadow in Noah's heart expand dozens of times, or even hundreds of times, causing Noah's clenched fist to begin to sweat. Noah's intuition told him, next, he absolutely can't go any further. Noah believes in his intuition. If the scene inside is the same as what I saw in the dream, then even if I go in, the consequences will be unimaginable, right? Noah gritted his teeth. Since the scene in the dream has been confirmed to be real, then the next step is to ask Gaia and Aleia. With this idea, Noah took a deep look at the crimson space, turned around, and wanted to fly down. However, at this moment, two familiar tender female voices with extremely strong anxiety and panic suddenly exploded in Noah's ears. "Little Noah, run!" The moment these two familiar tender female voices suddenly sounded in Noah's ears, the shadow in Noah's heart suddenly exploded, turning into the crisis of death. Noah's pupils directly shrank. Without any hesitation, his body turned into a sharp arrow and shot down. Crack! Almost at the same time, a sound like something cracking was very clearly transmitted into Noah's ears. Noah didn't stop. As he shot downwards, he turned his head back and looked up. The next second, the scene imprinted in Noah's eyes made his scalp explode, and goosebumps grew all over his body. Crack! Crack, crack, crack. In the distance, the crimson space suddenly cracked like glass. In the cracks, a blood-like liquid seeped out. No, that's not liquid. What seeped out from the cracks of the crimson space was an overwhelming, densely packed group of Grim Reapers. Yes, Grim Reaper. The cloak covering their body was red. The Grim Reaper that appeared in Noah's dream. Crack! At this moment, an indescribable sound rang out from the bodies of the Grim Reapers. Then Noah saw it. The dense group of locust-like Grim Reapers, like a rain curtain pouring down from the crimson sky, swept down violently. Undoubtedly, their speed was not fast, but the distance between them and Noah was shortened by an unknown amount in an instant. Bang! Without any hesitation, Noah mobilized the endless energy in his body and turned it all into divine power. Like a golden storm, it soared up from his body. In the depths of Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 patterns on the stone plate trembled, then suddenly turned and pointed in the direction of the phoenix. Crack! Noah directly turned into a phantom, entered the world of speed, and rushed in the direction of the ground. Something that Noah did not expect happened. Crack! He saw that the dense group of locust-like Grim Reapers once again made an indescribable sound, as if they had also entered the world of speed and shrouded down overwhelmingly. What? Noah's expression changed abruptly. In just a moment, the rain-like Grim Reapers were like turbulent waves, roaring and shrouding Noah's body. Noah looked at the Grim Reapers that were like monstrous waves, roaring and shrouding his body. He wanted to make a certain degree of resistance, but his body's instincts seemed to be telling him not to waste his energy, and he stiffened up. Noah's mind became blank. Chapter 16:27. Screech Dash. With an indescribable sound, the densely packed group of Reapers surged downwards like a tidal wave that could devour everything. From Noah's perspective, the scene was as if the entire sky was filled with Grim Reapers that were as red as blood. They collectively emitted a terrifying aura that poured down like a torrential downpour. It was completely meaningless to compare them in terms of quantity, right? This was because each of the Grim Reapers was a few sizes bigger than Noah. Their height was estimated to be close to 4 meters tall. There were countless of such Grim Reapers. How many billions would that be? What about billions? Or tens of billions? It would be meaningless to even count the number of Grim Reapers, right? The human tide formed by such a terrifying number of Grim Reapers was enough to drown a continent, let alone Noah, who was only one person. Therefore, looking at the dense group of Grim Reapers that poured down like a torrential rain and surged like a roaring wave, Noah almost subconsciously understood what was going on. Currently, he had no means to resist them at all. So what if he had the authority to display a variety of abilities? So what if he had a treasure vault with more than 1,000 types of relics? So what if he had the physical ability to surpass deities? So what if he had endless energy? Currently, he definitely had no way to block the Grim Reaper's tide that was surging toward him like a roaring wave. It was not that Noah did not have enough means, but the difference in level was too great. It was just like how a world boxing champion could easily defeat hundreds or thousands of ordinary people like himself. But even if such an existence threw a punch at the sky, let alone cause any impact, it wouldn't even be able to touch anything, right? For Noah, the Grim Reaper's tide was the sky that he could not touch. No matter how brilliant his means were, he would still not be able to touch the overwhelming red shadows of death that were surging toward him. That was the fact that Noah's instinct told him. Although he had not tried, even if he tried, it would just be a dying struggle, right? However, so what if you're struggling? A violent hurricane-like divine power surged from Noah's body. Like another monstrous golden wave, it swept across the area below the Grim Reaper's tide that was pouring down like a torrential downpour. Instead of dying in despair, why don't we fight for our lives before we die? At this moment, in the depths of Noah's heart, the stone plate with the 10 patterns connected to it trembled like never before. Immediately after, half of the 10 patterns blossomed with dazzling light. The giant, white horse, the dragon emperor, beast, phoenix. At this moment, Noah pushed his power to the limit, using 5 incarnations at the same time. I'm the strongest, and I hold all victory in my hands. No matter if it is a human or a demon, I am the one who defeats all enemies. I will defeat any enemy that stand in my way. As Noah chanted the holy words of the God of victory, a terrifying storm of divine energy surged from his body. His pitch-black and deep eyes were dyed with a dazzling golden color, flashing with a brilliant light. I don't care what you are. If you want to take my life, let's give it a try then. Amidst the violent roar, the terrifying divine storm that surged from Noah's body began to flash with a bright light. The light was like a myriad of stars, flashing and condensing together, forming a shape. In just a moment, countless xenomorphs appeared from the divine storm. They were handsome draconic horses. Their entire bodies were covered in crimson armor, and their armor was decorated with dazzling gems. They had a dragon horn on their foreheads, and their eyes flashed with red light. Their bodies were dozens of meters tall, and they stepped on golden flames. They were gigantic dragon horses, and their bodies were majestic. Combining the power of the giant, white horse, dragon emperor, beasts, and phoenix, Noah created a tide of draconic horses that was comparable to the death god's tide. This result caused Noah's whole body to burn with burning pain. His internal organs felt like they were about to explode, letting out an unbearable sound. Screech. Seeing the innumerable majestic dragon horses appear, the tide of death that was swarming over let out a roar that sounded like a furious roar. Nay, as if competing with each other, the majestic draconic horses let out a neatly arranged neigh that resounded throughout the entire space between worlds. The neigh of the draconic horses faintly carried the roar of dragons and tigers, like an echo, turning into ripples that reverberated in the sky. Immediately, the golden draconic horse tide and the red death god's tide rushed out at lightning speed, crossing the entire space in an instant, quietly colliding. Rumble. Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, the draconic horse tide and the death god's tide that fiercely collided with each other turned into a terrifying golden flame and a red storm, crazily entangling with each other. Boom! Like a star exploding, the unimaginable golden flame and red storm swept out from the center of the pure white world, instantly expanding to an area of thousands of meters. If such a collision occurred in an ordinary world, perhaps, at this moment, the world would have already let out a mournful cry. The space would have already been shattered inch by inch, and even the atmosphere would have been completely evaporated, leaving not a trace behind. Unfortunately, this pure white world called space between worlds was terrifyingly sturdy. There was no concept of time, nor was there any concept of space. Even the atmosphere did not exist, allowing the terrifying golden sea of fire and scarlet storm to silently expand, occupying a corner of the world. However, if someone were to be caught in it, the consequences would be unimaginable. At the very least, Even existences like the White Yiksha and the Queen of All Saints would at least be seriously injured if they were to be caught in it. Undoubtedly, it was a collision of this level. In the next second, the scales of victory tipped in favor of one side. Wong! The Scarlet Storm appeared to be mocking something as it emitted a buzzing sound. Immediately, it forcefully penetrated the bright golden sea of fire. The terrifying flame sea that was formed by the power of the 5 incarnations of Giant, White Horse, Dragon Emperor, Beast Horde, and Phoenix was like an illusion at this moment. It could not block the Red Storm at all, and the Red Storm passed through it as if it did not see anything. What dash? Noah's expression changed drastically. Taking advantage of this moment, the Red Storm passed through the terrifying golden flame sea and rushed in front of Noah. Like a bloody mouth, it swelled and crazily enveloped Noah's body. Noah was already powerless to turn the situation around. Clang! Just as the Red Storm was about to swallow Noah's body, a bright golden light suddenly bloomed on Noah's body. Noah did not even have the time to react. A golden sword that looked like a key suddenly emerged from his body. With a turn of his body, it shot towards the sky. That is, Noah could not help but be shocked. This was because Noah did not recognize the golden sword that was shaped like a key. It was the gate of Babylon that Gaia and Aleia gave to Noah. Under Noah's gaze, the golden sword that shot up into the sky and met the red storm that was surging towards it trembled slightly. Pong! The gate of Babylon treasure exploded in an instant, turning into golden powder that sprinkled down from the sky. Then it stopped in mid-air, like a layer of golden light film that covered the sky. The moment the crimson storm came into contact with the powdery light film, it abruptly froze and was unable to move any further. Between heaven and earth, silence was restored. Noah could only stare blankly at this scene. He was unable to react at all, and his body fell down. Then 2 pairs of rather tender hands hugged him. Chapter 16:28. In the pure white world, 2 petite girls hugged Noah from the left and right as they descended from the sky and slowly landed on the ground. In the surroundings, the feathers that were emitting a soft white light immediately surrounded Noah, as if they were extremely happy about the result of Noah's escape, and they danced in the air excitedly. It was only at this moment that Noah finally reacted. He looked to his side and was immediately stunned. Gaia? Aleia? The petite girls that suddenly appeared were Gaia and Aleia. Are you okay? Gaia said with lingering fear. That was really scary. It's different from our world. There is no concept of time here. Therefore, although we immediately enter the space between worlds, the time still doesn't match. Aleia said with an indifferent expression. Fortunately, we made it in time. Hearing Gaia and Aleia's words, Noah's expression was a little uncertain. But why are you here? In the past, Gaia and Aleia undoubtedly said that only Noah could enter the space between worlds. Even the 2 great restraints couldn't enter the space between worlds. Now, how did the 2 great restraints come out as world? Don't be surprised, little Noah. We didn't lie to you. If we relied on our own strength, we wouldn't be able to enter this space between worlds. Gaia gave a rare, bitter laugh. This is an exception. There won't be another chance like this in the future, right? In short, it's good that you're fine. Aleia said. After all, it would be very troublesome to explain the situation in detail. Hearing this, Noah's face showed a trace of bitterness. He raised his head and looked at the red storm outside the powder film. His voice was more or less self-deprecating. Is there anything more troublesome than that thing? Gaia and Aleia were speechless. However, it was clear that Noah was saved because of Gaia and Aleia. I didn't expect the gate of Babylon that you gave me to be able to block that thing. Noah's eyes flickered. It seems that it's not just a treasury. No, it's really just a treasury. Gaia shook her head. The gate of Babylon doesn't have any special power. It's just a treasury. However, in order to make it useful at a crucial moment, we added some special things inside. Aleia also looked at the sky. So, just like our appearance here, the gate of Babylon can resolve the crisis brought about by the disaster. This is the only time it can do so. Is that so? Noah nodded slowly and looked at Gaia and Alea with an unprecedentedly serious expression. Then, can you explain me what's going on? Gaia and Alea exchanged glances before turning to Noah in unison. Has this day finally arrived? Gaia wasn't as naughty as before. Instead, she was like a wise person who had seen through everything. Her expression was unusually calm. Although I knew that you would have to face all of this sooner or later, I didn't expect it to come so suddenly. Suddenly. It was indeed very sudden. If it wasn't sudden, why would Noah have such a dream when he was trying to use the sun's sovereignty to draw out the possibility of the disaster from his body? If it wasn't sudden, why would Noah encounter the biggest crisis in history without any preparation? However, just like what Gaia had said, sooner or later, Noah would have to face all of this. At this stage, there's no benefit in continuing to hide it from you. Alea's gaze turned to Noah. Since you suddenly went to search for that thing, it proves that the time is ripe for you to come into contact with your true mission. In the past, I hid it from you because I didn't want you to come into contact with that thing before the time was ripe. Now, there's no need for that. Little Noah, we will tell you everything now. Gaia smiled at Noah, including the meaning of your existence and why you exist. Gaia, and Alea looked at each other again and raised one hand at the same time. Clang! The fluttering feathers suddenly gathered and surrounded Noah, Gaia, and Alea, releasing dazzling radiance. The light enveloped the three of them, causing their figures to be enveloped by the white light in an instant. Then, they disappeared. Noah felt a blur in front of his eyes, and his entire vision was dyed white. Then, two small hands held both of Noah's hands, bringing him back to his senses. After coming back to reality, the radiance in front of Noah's eyes began to fade. The scene in front of Noah was still that pure white world. However, looking at this pure white world, Noah was stunned. Because in this pure white world, there were no feathers emitting a soft white light, nor was there a bone-chilling red storm. There was only a hazy mist. It was extremely hazy and filled the entire between the worlds with white mist. Noah couldn't help but look around. Don't be nervous. Alea held Noah's hand tightly. Now, what you see is just an image reproduced by the world. It's not the real world. That's right. Gaia nodded. This used to be the between the worlds before anything was born. The between the worlds before anything was born, Noah said with uncertainty. In other words, before the world was born? Yes. Alea looked at the white mist that filled the entire space. At the very beginning, before the world was born, the between the world was like this. At the same time, this is the most primitive between the worlds. Gaia extended her hand and pointed in front. Little Noah, look there. Noah immediately looked in the direction Gaia pointed and looked in front of the white mist. Because the mist was too dense, at the beginning, Noah couldn't see anything at all. However, gradually Noah discovered something. In front of the extremely dense white mist, there was a crystal. It was an extremely pure and clean crystal without any color or color. It was as clear as a lake. Womp. The pure crystal floated in the air, and, as it spun, it emitted wisps of mist. The white mist and emotions in the entire pure white world were all emitted from the crystal. Looking at the dazzling and beautiful crystal, Noah almost subconsciously asked, What is that? That is the center of the between the worlds. Alea immediately replied, It is also the origin of everything. Without it, nothing would be born in this world, Gaia said. From a human's point of view, this place is equivalent to the universe. However, in this universe called Between the Worlds, what is born is not a celestial body but a world. All the worlds are born from the center of the Between the Worlds because that is the origin of the mist. Alea's voice clearly entered Noah's ears. Originally, in the Between the Worlds, nothing would be born, but the mist emitted from the center brought life to the Between the Worlds. Following Alea's words, in front of them, the mist suddenly gathered into a ball without any reason. The ball of mist started to beat like a heart. With every beat, the ball of mist would start to condense. In the end, the ball of mist emitted a gentle light and turned into a feather. Do you see it? Gaia pointed at the feather. That is the starting world. The starting world? Noah looked at Gaia. Why do you call it the starting world? The one who answered this question was not Gaia, but Aleia. Because that world is the reason why there are so many worlds in the Between the Worlds. Chapter 16:29. In fact, this was not something difficult to understand. The universe could give birth to many planets. However, within the range of human observation, life had only appeared on Earth in the entire universe. If Between the Worlds was compared to the universe, then the same logic applied. In the beginning of this universe, only one world was born. That wasn't an amazing world. It didn't have a restraining force like ours, nor did it have the mysteries that little Noah encountered in the past. It was just an extremely ordinary world. Gaia looked at the lonely feather fluttering in the hazy white fog. His voice seemed to come from a very distant place. In that world, humans didn't have any special powers. They only had to repeat their ordinary lives day after day. There was no mystery to speak of. However, such an ordinary world became the beginning of the entire Between the Worlds, Aleia said faintly. Because, even if there was no mystery, humans had extremely rich imaginations. They had always been pursuing mystery in their fantasies. Parallel worlds, dimensional spaces, alien domains, superpowers, different dimensions. Humans with intelligence used extremely rich imaginations to pursue these mysteries. They also created these mysterious existences in their own minds and fantasized wildly. Gaia smiled helplessly. As the will of the planet, I can't understand why humans would pursue these things. However, those fantasies are the foundation of existences like us. While Gaia and Aleia were talking, the hazy fog in front of them changed again. Around the lonely feather fluttering in Between the Worlds, the hazy fog had gradually gathered into clumps and was beating like a heart. As it beat, the clumps of fog also condensed. In the end, those clumps all turned into feathers in a soft white light. Just like what you saw, after the birth of the original world, more and more worlds were born, Aleia said to Noah. That wasn't a world that was born by chance. There was only one world that was born purely by chance. The worlds after that were all created by drawing on the fantasies of the humans in that world. They were all specious worlds that were born from the imagination of that world. Absorbing the fantasies of humans? Noah couldn't help but ask, does the fog have such properties? Therefore, we also call the fog imagination, Gaia said with a smile. And after you were born, the Between the Worlds that you saw had already become a universe that absorbed the fantasies of the original world. It's a universe filled with fantasies, Aleia said word by word. A universe filled with fantasies. An all-encompassing fantasy universe. Noah muttered to himself as he repeated this sentence. After a long while, he fell silent and suddenly opened his mouth again. Then, what's the deal with my birth that you just mentioned? Your birth wasn't by chance. Gaia hesitated for a moment and then sighed. Your existence is a part of fighting against fantasies. Part of fighting against illusions? Noah's hand tightened slightly, and his eyes flickered as he spoke in a low voice. Then are those red things? Gaia and Aleia nodded their heads with a heavy heart. Although the fantasies of the humans in the original world gave birth to many worlds, humans were originally an existence that didn't know whether they were good or evil, Aleia said with her identity as the amalgamation of human consciousness. Naturally, if there are good fantasies, there will also be bad fantasies. Those fantasies also became nutrients for the fog and were absorbed by the fog. While speaking, the fog in front of them changed again. A ball of fog gathered together like the world that was born before. It beat like a heart and gradually condensed. However, the ball of fog gradually pulsed and condensed, and its color began to change. From the pure white color at the beginning, it gradually turned into the color of blood. Seeing the ball of blood-red fog, Noah's palm couldn't help but smoke. Gaia and Alea's expressions also became very serious. Under the gaze of the three people, the blood-red fog continued to shrink. In the end, accompanied by a bloody light, it turned into a red space. That is the existence that absorbed all of the evil fantasies. Gaia bit her lips. All of the disasters started from there. As his voice faded, the scarlet space suddenly began to crack, creating many cracks. One by one, deathly red figures rushed out from the crack. They surged out like a tide and rushed towards the feathers that were emitting a gentle white light. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they flew towards the feathers that were emitting a gentle white light. At this moment, the feathers in the pure white world were like frightened birds, fleeing in all directions. However, there were still some feathers that were caught by the red figures. The red figures, like the god of death, turned into a red storm one after another. It was like a sharp blade that ruthlessly cut through the feathers. The feathers that were cut by the crimson storm were all cut into halves, losing all their luster and falling to the ground in a dull manner. Seeing this scene, Noah's heart burned with rage. If it wasn't for the fact that everything in front of him was just an image, Noah wouldn't have been able to stop himself from attacking. Although Noah couldn't do anything to those red figures, Noah could only watch as the worlds were cut in half. That feeling was really unbearable. Originally, the world should not be able to interfere with the world. Just like how if two planets of the same mass in the universe collide with each other, they would definitely die at the same time. As an existence that shares the same root as the world, the shadow that has absorbed the fog of evil should not be able to affect the world. Alea continued to speak with an incomparably calm and indifferent tone. However, those red figures are the embodiment of the evil fantasies. They're like cells that are born with the ability to devour. They can affect the worlds and even destroy them. Fortunately, those worlds were born from the evil fantasies, Gaia added. As long as the worlds and the space between worlds aren't completely destroyed and the people's fantasies still exist, then these worlds can be repaired. Wait, Noah was suddenly startled. Doesn't that mean? Looks like you've already thought of it. Gaia faintly sighed. That's right. The only things that can be repaired are the worlds that were born from the evil fantasies. If the original world is destroyed, then it definitely can't be repaired. And as luck would have it, the starting world was destroyed. Alea looked up and stared ahead. It was during the first shadow hunt. Noah followed Alea's gaze and looked forward. There was a feather that wasn't cut in half like the other feathers. Instead, it was shattered like glass by the red storm, leaving behind only a pile of debris. This shadow that was born from the evil thoughts can affect and destroy other worlds, but other worlds still can't interfere with it, as it has the same origin, Gaia slowly said. Under such circumstances, a portion of the worlds that had perfect wills began to realize that they had to think of a solution. Otherwise, these worlds that had no resistance at all would one day be completely destroyed. For this reason, the world itself initiated an action that all the other worlds responded to and began. Alea turned his head and looked straight at Noah. They gathered the fragments of the original world that could no longer be repaired and gathered the power of all the worlds to turn those fragments into a life form. This sentence made Noah's heart beat fiercely. Because the original world could no longer be repaired, the world successfully interfered with its fragments and also successfully injected life into those fragments, turning them into a human. Gaia held Noah's hand and looked straight at him. That person is you, Noah. What formed your body was the fragments of the original world. What formed your life was the power of all the worlds. Alea also held Noah's hand. Therefore, you are in existence on the same level as the worlds. You are also the child of the worlds born from the many worlds. You can freely travel between worlds, find the lost world fragments, and repair the destroyed worlds. After all, every world here was born from the human imagination of the original world that formed Noah's body. Noah was born with the ability to repair these worlds. As for this shadow that was born from the evil thoughts, it was also an illusion of evil that was obtained from the original world. Therefore, Noah should have the ability to interfere with the other side and eliminate all the disasters that were born from the evil thoughts. If it wasn't for the fact that the original world was just an ordinary world and didn't have any mysteries, the world itself wouldn't have been destroyed so easily. Gaia and Alea said at the same time. Therefore, Noah, you are the only existence that can eliminate the natural enemies of the world. Chapter 16:30. When the dazzling white light began to fade, Noah, Gaia, and Alea returned to the pure white world. Noah opened his eyes with a complicated expression. Gaia, who was still holding Noah's hand, couldn't help but speak. After you were born, for your growth, the many worlds here sent you into one of them. After all, even though you've been bestowed with sufficient intelligence, emotions are something that can only be developed through contact with all sorts of people, Alea said. Although the worlds gave birth to you, they didn't want to treat you as a tool. For this reason, they gave you a good environment to grow up in. That is absolutely necessary. It is because of this that you were sent into that guild full of positive energy and grew up to be a happy child. Gaia smiled sweetly. As for us, we were given the mission of guiding you by the various worlds. That is why we were able to form a connection with you. Don't worry, I don't doubt your intentions. It's just that I didn't expect to have such a background. Noah could only bitterly smile. Moreover, even if you made me sound so powerful, I still couldn't do anything to those shadows. That is because your true strength hasn't been activated yet. Alea immediately said, no matter what, you are still a life formed from the fragments of a world. Although the original world has been destroyed, there is no doubt that your body contains the potential to become an existence that can rival worlds. In other words, little Noah, you have the potential to become an existence that can rival worlds. Gaia reached out a hand and pressed Noah's chest. Isn't it because you came into contact with that possibility that you realized your mission and discovered the existence of the culprit that destroyed the original world? Hearing Gaia and Alea's words, Noah couldn't help but speak. But that possibility can't be activated at all. That is because the power you use to activate that possibility is too weak. Alea shook her head. That is a possibility that can rival an entire world. If you don't use the power of an entire world, you won't be able to activate it. Even if you're lucky enough to activate it, with your current human body, you will instantly explode from that huge possibility. Noah was shocked and felt a lingering fear. There was actually such a serious consequence. However, was it a possibility that could rival an entire world? No wonder the power of a sun couldn't be activated. Then what should I do? Noah said helplessly. Even if I can activate the possibility in my body, I won't be able to withstand it. Not to mention not being able to activate it, right? No problem, Gaia solemnly said. We have long been prepared. At this moment, the surrounding feathers that were dancing in the air began to rotate, flashing one after another. Gaia and Alea stepped forward at the same time. As though they were holding something, they slowly raised one of their hands. Whoa! Suddenly, the entire space between the worlds began to tremble, and the ground emitted a blinding white light. Noah subconsciously squinted his eyes. Then, from the ground that was emitting the dazzling white light, a light source rose and appeared in front of Noah. Looking at the light source, Noah slightly widened his eyes. He saw that in the light source, there was a piece of crystal. It was a piece of crystal clear, pure and clean as water. That is, Noah said in surprise. Isn't that the center of Between the Worlds? Ever since Shadow appeared, the worlds hid the center of Between the Worlds to prevent Shadow from finding it. Alea said, as if it was a matter of fact. No matter what, it is the center of the Between Worlds, the source of the imaginative power. Without the imaginative power, a mere fantasy would not have become a factor in the entire Between World situation. And if Shadow finds the center of the world between worlds, it might be able to absorb the imaginative power produced by this crystal, causing more imaginative power to be filled with evil fantasies. Who knows? Gaia explained. Therefore, the worlds hid it. Now, it is time for it to be used. In the end, the origin of the world should be imaginative power. Illusions are just designs and accelerators. Alea was still the same as before, coldly saying something shocking. Since the so-called sovereignty of the sun has no way of drawing out the possibility in your body, then we will use the imaginative power produced by the center of between the worlds to convert the sovereignty of the sun into the sovereignty of the world. That will do. What? Noah was really stunned. Sovereignty of the world? Not only will you convert the sovereignty of the sun into the sovereignty of the world, but in order for your body to be able to withstand the huge possibility of a world, you will also need to convert the favor you receive from God, which is your ability value, into the favor of the world. Gaia raised her fingers and calculated. In addition, the power you receive from God can also be converted into the power of the world. Sovereignty of the world, the power of the world, and the favor of the world can absolutely perfectly convert the possibility in your body into the power of a world. At that time, you'll be able to stand on the same level as Shadow. Alea raised her eyes and looked at Noah. It is for this purpose that we suggested you to travel between the worlds and work hard to increase your strength. In the end, you will find a suitable power to convert with imaginative power and draw out the power in your body. Things are progressing more smoothly than we expected. Little Noah, the sovereignty of the sun, the power of God, and the favor of God that you received are all suitable to be converted with imaginative power and upgraded to the power of the world. Everything is on the right track. Gaia took a deep breath. Now, it is time to counterattack. Little Noah, are you ready? Hearing this, Noah raised his head and looked at the sky out of reflex. There, the red storm outside the powdery light film had turned back into the red shadow of the Grim Reaper. It was flying back and forth outside the light film like a swarm of locusts, making one's scalp go numb. However, the Grim Reaper's tide didn't have any thoughts of retreating. Presumably, the Grim Reaper's tide should have realized that Noah was the only existence that could threaten them, so they definitely wouldn't retreat before killing Noah, right? It was because of this that last time, when the Grim Reaper came out to hunt, Gaia and Alea hurriedly called Noah over and didn't hesitate to kill him once to avoid being discovered by the Grim Reaper. At the thought of this, Noah also took a deep breath, calmed himself down, and looked at the translucent crystal. What should I do? Relax your body, Alea directly said. Release your power, sovereignty, and favor. Noah nodded heavily and closed his eyes. In the next moment, Noah's body flashed with a dim light. In the dim light, on Noah's body, a stone plate with 10 patterns connected to it, with a sun in the center and 24 engravings in the sun slowly floated forward. At the same time, on Noah's back, mysterious characters jumped up and lined up neatly. Like a stream of light, they flew out and circled around the stone plate. Seeing this scene, Gaia and Alea nodded at the same time. Leave the rest to us, Gaia said to Noah. Little Noah, don't worry, we will definitely succeed in turning your power, sovereignty, and favor into a power equal to the world. Will it take a long time? Noah pointed upwards. Will the light screen be able to withstand it? I don't know. The light film was formed by us fusing a trace of imaginative power into the gate of Babylon. Even we were only able to temporarily leave our world and enter the world between worlds with the help of imaginative power, Alea explained. Once the imaginative power is exhausted, the light screen will disappear, and we will return to our original world. There is only one chance like this, and it can't be replicated again. We have to race against time and complete the imaginative power conversion as soon as possible. Gaia patted his chest. Well, in short, leave everything to us. Then what should I do? Noah frowned. Could it be that I'm just going to watch from the side? Gaia and Alea looked at each other. That's true. Gaia muttered to himself for a while before speaking. Since that's the case, little Noah, go and do what you want to do. Do what I want to do? Noah was stunned. No matter what the result is, this time, you have to face the disaster that is active in the between worlds. In the end, it would be good if you win, but if you lose, whether it is you or your family, friends, or lovers in the thousands of worlds, they will all die together. Alea reminded, just do what you want to do, and don't leave any regrets. Noah was silent. Chapter 16:31. In order to not leave any regrets. After telling Noah these words, Gaia and Alea no longer disturbed Noah. They controlled the center of the between the worlds to generate imagination and upgrade Noah's authority, sovereignty, and favor. Only Noah was left standing there, speechless. Regrets. Thinking about it carefully, Noah really had a lot of things that he was worried about. If this was really the last chance, then no matter what, Noah hoped to complete these things. Thinking about this, Noah silently thanked Gaia and Alea in his heart. Wong, as if they knew what Noah wanted to do the most at this moment, a feather emitting a soft white light lightly fluttered in front of Noah. Looking at the feather floating in front of him, Noah didn't hesitate to raise a hand and press on it. In the next second, Noah's figure turned into a light and flowed into the feather. Gaia and Alea, who secretly saw this scene, showed an expression that was expected. Sure enough, the thing he wants to do the most is go home. Strictly speaking, the Between the Worlds was Noah's home. Unfortunately, for Noah, there was only one place that could be called home. Gaia and Alea were very clear on this point. This was the only thing that wouldn't change no matter what happened, right? As the chosen one by the world to become Noah's only hope, Gaia and Alea could only silently bless this child. They hoped that in the end, Noah would not have any regrets. Walala! Before he could open his eyes, Noah heard a clear sound of waves. Among the waves, there were even some seagulls crying. Hearing these sounds, Noah knew he was back. Thus, Noah slowly opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, Noah was immediately startled. This was because in front of Noah, a young and cute face was incomparably close. A pair of emerald green eyes were staring at Noah with curiosity. Oh, Mavis blinked. You're finally back. First generation? Noah hurriedly retreated a few steps, creating a distance between him and Mavis. However, Mavis seemed to not want to let Noah escape and closed in on Noah. Hey. Mavis was like a curious child. While closing in on Noah, she impatiently asked, "Where did you go before? I searched the entire Sky Wolf Island and couldn't find you." Hearing this, Noah was puzzled by Mavis' question and curiosity at first, but then he realized. Before leaving this world, Mavis had used one of the 3 great spells of the fairy tale, called the Fairy Sphere, to freeze the entire Sky Wolf Island. This was an absolute defense spell that could even freeze time. In a situation where he couldn't break through it, where could Noah go? In the end, Mavis was stunned that she couldn't find Noah in the vicinity of the Sky Wolf Island. No wonder Mavis was so curious. However, Noah didn't answer Mavis' question and instead looked around. At this moment, Noah was on the beach of the Sky Wolf Island. Outside, there was a boundless sky and sea. As for the barrier of the fairy sphere, it had long since disappeared. As expected, the absolute defense spell has been removed. Noah muttered. 7 years have already passed outside. Mavis had said that if he wanted to remove the power of the fairy sphere, he would have to spend 7 years. Now, since the barrier of the fairy sphere could no longer be seen, it proved that this super spell had already been removed. Therefore, 7 years should have passed in this world. To be exact, it should be 7 years and a month. Mavis corrected. Since the power of the fairy sphere was removed, a month has already passed. This explanation wasn't out of Noah's expectations. It wasn't something that was hard to understand, because time was frozen and needed 7 years to unfreeze. When 7 years had passed in the outside world, only a moment had passed in the Sky Wolf Island. At that time, Noah, who was on the Sky Wolf Island, had chosen to leave this world and head to another world. And when Noah descended into this world again, at least a month would have passed in this world. If the time on the Sky Wolf Island had been frozen, a month wouldn't have passed. Therefore, it was only natural that when time began to flow on Heavenly Wolf Island again, it would be when the fairy sphere was removed and 7 years had passed in the outside world. Under these circumstances, Noah once again arrived on the Sky Wolf Island a month later. That would naturally be 7 years and a month in the outside world. Then what about grandfather and the others? Noah somewhat hurriedly asked Mavis. What about the frozen companions of the fairy tale on this island? They left a month ago. Mavis answered Noah's question with a lively and cheerful voice. At that time, because they couldn't find you, Makarov and those children thought that something had happened to you during your battle with Akonarolia. They almost went to the Black Dragon of Silent Revelation. Then what happened afterwards? Noah asked. What happened afterwards? Afterwards, I told them that you had some matters to attend to and that nothing had happened. Only then did they feel at ease and leave the Sky Wolf Island and return to the guild. Mavis said with a beaming smile. Therefore, you have to thank me. Noah let out a sigh of relief and smiled gratefully at Mavis. Thank you, first generation. After saying this, Noah subconsciously reached out with his hand, wanting to pat Mavis' head. However, at this moment, Mavis seemed to have been electrocuted and fiercely jumped away, looking at Noah with a face full of fear. You mustn't touch me. Noah stared blankly for a moment before remembering and smiling embarrassedly. I'm sorry. I forgot that you're a specter and can't touch you. No, that's not the problem. Mavis shook her head and frowned, looking at Noah with an extremely serious expression. Isn't your physique able to eliminate the power of any magic? For an existence like me that doesn't even have a physical body, if I were to be touched by you, I wonder if I would also be eliminated. Noah scratched his cheek. That's impossible, right? I've never heard of a resistance to curses being able to eliminate the existence of specters. For an existence like me, I don't even know what kind of recognition will be given to me. If I'm considered to be an existence similar to magic or related to magic, then it's not impossible for you to eliminate me. Mavis shook her head without any room for discussion as she puffed up her cheeks. Moreover, I'm an elder. Casually touching an elder's head is an impolite thing to do. Noah looked at the angry Mavis with an extremely strange expression as he muttered to himself, Don't worry, Mavis. No matter how you look at it, I'm the older one, right? Mavis looked at Noah angrily. You just said something impolite, didn't you? No, nothing like that. Noah laughed dryly and hurriedly changed the topic. Since everyone has gone back, it's better for me to hurry back as well. I don't know what has become of Fairy Tale. After losing their main force for 7 years, I'm afraid that Fairy Tale has already encountered a lot of problems, right? Thinking of this, Noah could no longer sit still. Go. Mavis smiled tolerantly. Remember to send my regards to everyone in the guild. Noah nodded heavily and looked towards the ocean, slowly clenching his fist. He hoped that the guild would be safe. Chapter 1632. Fiore Kingdom, Villa Magnolia. Compared to 7 years ago, Magnolia was neither prosperous nor weak. It was still the same as before, as if nothing had changed at all. It was bustling with activity. On the streets, people were walking back and forth. Around them, there were shouts and hawking sounds coming from the stalls. People were laughing and chatting with each other, or patronizing the stalls. The noise was constant, revealing a vibrant vitality. This scene made people feel unusually warm. However, walking on this street, Noah frowned slightly. It was not that he felt uncomfortable, but the conversation of the people around him caught Noah's attention. Did you hear? The main members of Fairy Tale seem to have returned? Main members? That's right. Don't tell me you've forgotten that 7 years ago, the main members of Fairy Tale went missing after they went out to sea? Oh, I remember now. There was indeed such a thing. I heard that the missing members seem to have returned a month ago. So that means that the guild is preparing to rise again? How can that trash guild rise again? Even if the main members are back, what can they do? It has already been 7 years, right? Well, that's true. A trash guild will always be a trash guild. Yeah. Noah's frown deepened as he listened to the conversation. There was a hint of anger and helplessness in his dark and deep eyes. Sure enough, 7 years will definitely cause problems. Noah was already mentally prepared for this. However, after confirming this, Noah's mood was both helpless and relieved. He was helpless because this result did not change. As for the sigh of relief, it was naturally because of the news about Fairy Tale. Although he did not know the current situation of Fairy Tale, but from the conversation of these people, the guild seemed to still be alive. As long as the guild was still alive, it was fine. Now, Noah clearly knew what kind of existence he was, and what kind of fate he had to bear. Under such circumstances, if Fairy Tale did not exist, then Noah really did not know what would become of him. Fortunately, the worst thing did not happen. However, even if the worst did not happen, from the conversations of the people around him, he could tell that Fairy Tale was not in good condition. He wondered how his former companions were doing now. At the thought of this, Noah couldn't help but quicken his pace as he headed in the direction of the Fairy Tale Guild. Under the illumination of the sun, the signboard of the Fairy Tale Guild flashed with a dazzling light. A flag with the guild emblem of Fairy Tale fluttered in the wind at the top of the castle-like building, silently announcing to the world that the guild that was once the #1 guild in the kingdom of Fiori was still alive and kicking. Noah directly walked into the guild and pushed open the door. If it was in the past, all the noises that belonged to Fairy Tale would have immediately entered Noah's ears. However, this time, such noises did not ring out. This was because the entire hall of Fairy Tale was extremely empty. There was not a single person in sight. Noah's expression immediately darkened. He silently lifted his foot and walked into it. Tap, 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 tap. The clear sound of footsteps reverberated in the air, bringing about a lonely atmosphere. This was something that would never have happened in the previous Fairy Tale. But now, Noah felt like he was the only person in the world, and a sense of loneliness rose in his heart. This feeling of loneliness was broken in the next second by a voice. Noah? A trembling voice rang out. Hearing this voice, Noah's footsteps paused, and he immediately turned his head to look at the source of the voice. In the next moment, 2 figures appeared in front of Noah's eyes. They were 2 middle-aged men who were at least 40 years old. At this moment, these 2 middle-aged men were looking at Noah with an expression of disbelief. Their eyes were brimming with tears, as if they were in disbelief. Looking at the 2 middle-aged men, Noah hesitated for a moment and spoke with uncertainty. "Are you Mikao and Wakaba?" After hearing Noah's words, the 2 middle-aged men finally believed what they had seen. "You're back, Noah." Mikao was overjoyed. "That's great. You're finally back. President and the others didn't see you when they came back, so we thought something had happened to you." Wakaba was also overjoyed. "Looks like you're safe. That's great." Seeing Mikao and Wakaba's joyous expressions, Noah's heart finally felt full. No matter what changes had happened to Fairy Tale, the only thing that mattered to him was the feeling of caring for his companions. Even after 7 years, it still hadn't changed. "You're all old." Noah first sighed. Then he thought of something and hurriedly asked, "Right, where's everyone in the guild?" Just as these words were spoken, an aged voice that was filled with surprise and joy rang out. "Oh, Noah, you're back." Along with this voice, a short and old figure slowly walked out from the intersection of the guild. It was Makarov, grandfather. Noah's heart suddenly calmed down. "Where have you been?" Makarov said reproachfully. "I've been gone for a month. Mira and Lisina were worried to death." Makarov's words elicited an extremely strong reaction from Makarov and Wakaba. "President, you haven't seen Noah for a month, but we haven't seen him for 7 years and 1 month. Yes, you just worried, but we were once in despair." From Mikao's and Wakaba's voices, Noah could clearly hear the excitement in their voices. That was true. To Makarov, Noah had only been missing for a month. However, to those who stayed in Fairy Tale, Noah had been missing for 7 years and 1 month. How could they not be excited? Fortunately, the members of Celestial Wolf Island Group had already returned a month ago. Otherwise, who knows how excited Mikao and Wakaba would be at this moment. No matter what, it's good that you're fine. Noah was relieved. Even after 7 years, the guild still hasn't changed. Noah said this from the bottom of his heart. However, Mikao and Wakaba refuted him. That's where you're wrong, Noah. Mikao sighed. The guild has changed a lot. Didn't you notice that the members of the guild aren't here? Wakaba said helplessly. Apart from your Celestial Wolf Island group, there are less than 10 people left. The rest have all left the guild. So it's like that. Noah sighed faintly. It was natural for the guild to encounter such a situation. After all, if the main force wasn't here, how could the guild continue to be the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom? Without the main force, there wouldn't be any powerful magic shooters to complete the difficult missions. This way, the missions would decrease, the income would decrease, the management wouldn't be good, and the members would leave. Anyway, sit down first. Makarov looked at Noah. I'll tell you the details of the guild. Noah nodded. Chapter 1633. During these 7 years, many things had happened to Fairy Tale. Due to the need to remove the ice on Heavenly Wolf Island, Mavis had sunk the entire island to the bottom of the sea to prevent any disturbances or trouble. The disappearance of Heavenly Wolf Island was finally discovered a month after Noah's group left the guild. At the same time, the news of Heavenly Wolf Island being attacked by the Black Dragon Achanalia, who had destroyed a country in silent revelation, had also spread throughout the continent. Fairy Tale, who thought that the main members of the guild and Heavenly Wolf Island had been destroyed by Achanalia, fell into chaos and despair. In the end, all kinds of problems arose. For example, after knowing that the main members of the guild were no longer around, the number of requests for Fairy Tale became fewer and fewer, making it difficult for the guild to operate. Another example was the remnants of the Dark Guild and the Magic Order that had been annihilated by the Fairy Tale. They had also come knocking on the door and launched more than one attack. Facing all of this, the guild's situation worsened by the day, and finally, the guild's members began to withdraw. Now, aside from the main members who had met with misfortune on Heavenly Wolf Island, the guild only had less than 10 members left. Fortunately, Noah had a bad premonition before leaving for Heavenly Wolf Island. He had squandered all of his wealth to purchase large amounts of magic crystals and gave them to Mikao, Wakaba, and the others for them to use when necessary. It was precisely because of these magic crystals that Fairy Tale was able to activate the runic defense system that Noah had left in the guild, blocking the attacks of many dark guilds and magic order. Not only that, when the guild was in a financial crisis, Mikao and Wakaba had sold off a portion of the magic crystals and earned a lot of money, allowing Fairy Tale to survive until now. If not for those magic crystals, even if Fairy Tale was still around, they would still be in debt. They might not even be able to protect the guild building. The magic crystals you left behind gave the guild a chance to breathe. A trace of turbidity appeared in Makarov's eyes. On the other hand, as the guild leader, I didn't leave anything behind, causing the members of the guild to suffer greatly. Back then, I only thought that something would happen. I didn't expect something like this to happen. Noah shook his head. It's really great that I left something behind back then. You've been a great help, Noah. Mikao patted Noah's shoulder. In these 7 years, I have more than once felt admiration and gratitude for your foresight. If it weren't for those magic crystals, our guild would have long since fallen into poverty, right? Wakaba bit his pipe as he exhaled a puff of white smoke. Even though, right now, our guild is also very poor and very weak, that's right. In the past, Noah had long since used up all the magic crystals he had left behind. Coupled with the withdrawal of a large number of members, Fairy Tale had really fallen into a state of poverty. If Noah's group still hadn't returned, Mikao and Wakaba would have had no choice but to borrow money from others. They might have even sold the guild building, right? No matter what, the members of the Heavenly Wolf group had returned at just the right time. It's really great that we didn't sell the guild building. Makeo nearly cried. Otherwise, as the fourth-generation guild leader, I wouldn't have the face to meet you. You only became the guild leader because no one in the guild had more experience than you. You don't have to talk about it all the time. Wakaba unhesitatingly tore down Makeo's mask. Now that the guild leader and Noah have returned, do you think you still have a share in the guild leader's position? Shut up. Of course, I know that. Makeo flew into a rage out of humiliation. I'm just saying it for fun. Can I? The two veteran members immediately started arguing in front of Makarov and Noah. Noah and Makarov didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but at the same time, they let the two go. Since everyone has returned, where are the others? Noah looked at Makarov. Why don't I see anyone? Right? You still don't know about this matter. Makarov finally remembered this matter. He picked up a glass of wine and took a swig as he explained, "That's right. Everyone went to cultivate." Cultivate? Noah was surprised, but immediately understood. So that's how it is. Are you planning to get back the 7 years of blank time? In this era, the main members of Fairy Tail were still as strong as they were 7 years ago. In other words, everyone else had obtained 7 years of growth time. Only the main members of Fairy Tail didn't have the slightest bit of growth in these 7 years. I'm afraid that Naz, Gray, and the others, who were able to occupy the first line of combat power in Fairy Tail, have already been reduced to the level of slightly stronger magic shooters in this era. If they didn't cultivate properly and got back the 7 years of blank time, even if the main members returned, there wouldn't be many people who would entrust them with difficult tasks. This was also the reason why people thought that even if the main members returned, Fairy Tail would still be a trash guild. Now, Fairy Tail is no longer the #1 guild in the kingdom. Instead, it has become an existence at the bottom. Makeo complained. For example, Lamia Scale and Blue Pegasus have now far surpassed us. Especially Lamia Scale, they are now the #2 guild in the kingdom. They are much stronger than us. No matter what, in Lamia Scale, there is still a Tara. Wakaba shrugged. They have a member of the top 10 Saint Magicians and a combat expert like Leo. It's impossible for them not to be strong. #2 in the kingdom? Noah noticed another detail. Then, who was the #1 in the kingdom? I heard that it was a very small guild 7 years ago. Makarov said with an indifferent attitude as he continued to drink his wine. However, that guild changed its leader in these 7 years and also brought in 5 very powerful magic shooters. As a result, it developed to the point where it is now the #1 guild in the kingdom. In other words, it's that guild that replaced us, right? Noah looked at Makeo. What is that guild called? The guild is called Sabertooth. They are very powerful. Makeo stroked his chin. In my opinion, that guild is much stronger than when we were at our peak 7 years ago. Not to mention Sabertooth, even Lamia Scale and Blue Pegasus are much stronger than we were in the past. Wakaba said with annoyance. At least, I don't think that we can fight them after training for a few months. Yes. Makeo nodded. Even if it is Noah, I don't think he could do anything to them now. A gap of 7 years is too serious. Wakaba said jokingly to Makarov. Leader, why don't we learn from Sabertooth and change the leader? Maybe we can return to our peak in a short time? Wakaba's words made Makarov stop drinking and narrow his eyes. You reminded me. Makeo and Wakaba were startled. At this time, Makarov suddenly said to Noah, "Let me show you something." Noah was also stunned. Something? What thing? Chapter 1634. Magnoria, Fairy Tail Guild. This was the underground of the guild. Under Makarov's lead, Noah walked down the stairs in the dim tunnel. Looking at Makarov, who was leading the way, Noah hesitated for a moment before he chose to speak. Grandpa, what are you going to show me? Makarov didn't turn around or answer. He just kept walking down the stairs. After a while, Makarov spoke. On Sirius Island, you once brought back a young man, right? Makarov's words made Noah's expression freeze slightly. That young man seems to be the black magician Jerf who existed 400 years ago. Makarov's voice became solemn. Is this true? I don't know. Noah shook his head, but Hades did call him Jerf. If that person said so, then it's true. Makarov smiled bitterly. As expected, Jerf has always been cursed by God and managed to survive. His words made Noah raise his eyebrows in surprise. Grandpa, you know that Jerf has been cursed by God? Not only do I know that Jerf has been cursed by God, but I also know the true form of the curse on him, Makarov said in a deep voice. That is the curse of the god of Anxalam. God of Anxalam? Noah was stunned. Anxalam is the god of life and death, Makarov said. 400 years ago, because Jerf conducted research on life and death, he seriously violated the domain of the god of Anxalam and was cursed by that god. That is an ancient curse called the curse of contradiction. Makarov's voice became extremely solemn. If the person who receives this curse respects life, then he will take away the lives of those around him. The more he respects life, the more the curse will release the energy of death, causing a lot of deaths and injuries around the cursed person. On the other hand, if he doesn't respect life, then he won't release the energy of death. That is why it is called the curse of contradiction. And this curse, in addition to taking away the lives of others, can also give the cursed person an immortal life. Makarov sighed. The reason Jerf was able to survive 400 years ago is because of the power of this curse, right? Noah suddenly recalled the scene when he met Jerf on Sirius Island. At that time, Jerf did release a huge amount of energy of death, causing the life around him to be devoured. At that time, apart from Noah and Wendy, who was protected by Noah, all the life around them was taken away. Is that the curse of the god of Anxalam? Noah couldn't help but mutter. What a vile curse. The curse would only take away the lives of others if it respected life. Didn't that mean that the more the cursed person cherished others, the more he would take away the lives of those he cherished? Such a vicious curse could no longer be described as a bad taste. The reason why Jerf was so desperate and agitated to beg Noah to kill him was because he was tortured by this curse, right? Moreover, the most vicious black magic shooter in history was someone who respected life. That was equally shocking. If it wasn't because he respected life, then Jerf wouldn't have triggered the energy of death on Sirius Island that almost affected Noah, right? What a vile hobby. Makarov heard Noah's mutterings clearly. After a moment of silence, Makarov spoke calmly. The first generation was also cursed by that vile hobby. Noah suddenly raised his head and looked at Makarov in shock. What did Makarov say just now? The first generation was cursed as well? Was he cursed by the god of Anxalam? It can't be, right? That was before the creation of Fairy Tale. Makarov didn't seem to know how shocked Noah was at this moment. He continued to walk down the stairs and began to tell his story. He continued to walk down the stairs. 100 years ago, the first generation was just a member of a small guild. At that time, the magical world wasn't as orderly as it is now. There were all sorts of conflicts and even killings between guilds in order to fight for territory, resources, and commissions. This made the era very chaotic. Makarov's voice rang clearly in the passage. At that time, the guild that the first generation was in was destroyed because of a dispute. The first generation then wandered to Sirius Island and lived there. After that, the first generation met 3 treasure hunters who came to Sirius Island to look for treasures. They left Sirius Island together and came to Magnolia. Makarov paused slightly. Along the way, the first generation and the 3 treasure hunters met an incredible black magic shooter and learned magic from him. Black magic shooter. Noah's eyes began to sparkle. That so-called black magic shooter should be Jeffrey, right? Did that mean that the first generation learned his magic from Jerf? This was yet another shocking fact. At that time, Magnolia was under the control of a dark guild, and the lives of the people were very difficult. Makarov continued. In order to save Magnolia from the hands of the dark guild, the first generation used an incomplete black magic. In the end, he paid the price of his body being unable to grow. So, the reason why the first generation's body was so petite was because of this. After that, the first generation and the three treasure hunters created Fairy Tale and became the four founders of Fairy Tale. Makarov glanced at Noah. Among them, there was Hades, whom you defeated. In addition, my father, your great-grandfather, Yuri Doria, was also among them. After that, everything in Fairy Tale was on the right track. The first generation also worked hard on various activities for the development of Fairy Tale. Makarov closed his eyes. Until one day, the first generation met Jerf again and learned something from him. Hearing this, Noah understood. Seems like you've guessed it. Makarov's voice sounded a little old. That's right, the first generation's body didn't stop growing. Instead, like Jerf, he was cursed by the god of Anktharum and became immortal. But isn't that a little strange? Noah couldn't help but ask. Since he's immortal, why did the first generation die? That's because the god of Anktharum's curse will cause those who cherish their lives to harm those around them. In order not to harm his companions in the guild, the first generation left the guild, found Jerf, and asked him to kill him, Makarov explained. But Jerf asked the first generation to kill him if there was a way. As two people with immortal lives, both the first generation and Jerf couldn't kill each other. Because of that, they were heartbroken that each other didn't cherish their own lives. Makarov shook his head and sighed. In the end, this action triggered the curse of the god of Anxalam, who both respected each other's lives to the greatest extent, causing the two of them to start taking each other's lives at the same time. Take each other's lives at the same time. Noah frowned. But the first generation and Jerf are both immortal, right? They can't be killed, right? That's right. Makarov nodded. Therefore, the curse of contradiction created an even greater contradiction, allowing the side with the stronger curse to take away the other side's life that should have been immortal. In other words, only one of them died in the end. There was no need to explain who that person was. That was how the first generation was killed by Jerf's curse. Chapter 16:35. In the dim passageway, a silent atmosphere began to pervade. Noah and Makarov were still walking down the stairs, and the atmosphere seemed a little heavy. Noah lowered his head slightly as he pondered over the secret that Makarov told him. At the same time, he smiled bitterly to himself. Who would have thought that in less than a day, he would actually learn so many secrets? Noah only found out about his real identity and mission today, including the secrets and disasters of the many worlds in between worlds. Now, after returning to the guild, he found out about such secrets in Fairy Tale. If it weren't for Noah's strong mental fortitude, he wouldn't have been able to digest so many things in such a short time. And that wasn't the end of it. Makarov intended to tell Noah's secrets, and that wasn't all. Everyone thought that the first bloodline had passed away, Makarov said abruptly. But in fact, the first bloodline didn't really die at that time. Noah was stunned on the spot, and he didn't know how to react. What's going on? Makarov seemed to have seen through Noah's confusion and explained the truth. At that time, the first bloodline was only in a state of suspended animation. His heart was still beating. Jerf sent the first bloodline, who was in a state of suspended animation, back to Fairy Tale. At that time, the second-generation guild leader, Presido, also known as Hades, discovered that the first bloodline wasn't dead, so he used the magic crystal in the guild's basement to revive the first bloodline. This attempt ended in failure. Speaking of this, Makarov clenched his fists with a heavy expression. However, Hades lived up to his reputation as a genius who was closest to the demonic abyss. Although his attempt ended in failure, he unexpectedly developed a magic spell that transcended eras by using the first generation's body that was sealed in a magic crystal and possessed the semi-permanent life support ability of the first generation. The three great spells above, Fairy Tale, Fairy Law, Fairy Glitter, and Fairy Sphere. Makarov said word by word. That is the permanent spell, Fairy Heart. Fairy Heart, Noah muttered softly. There was shock and astonishment in his voice. A spell developed from the semi-permanent life support ability of the first bloodline? Only the guild masters of Fairy Tale knew about the existence of that spell. We also called it Lumen Starlight, Makarov reminded him. You should still remember when Hades came to Magnolia and spent a lot of effort to kidnap our guild members, right? Of course, Noah remembered this matter. After all, at that time, Hades specially came to Magnolia because of Noah and spent a lot of effort to kidnap the members of Fairy Tale, forcing Noah to come out of town. At that time, the reason why Hades didn't dare to attack Magnolia directly and chose to go to such great lengths was because he was wary of the existence of Lumen Starlight, Makarov said. As long as that is there, no matter what kind of enemy we face, we have a chance of winning. Even if it's Jerv and Aconorolia, it's the same. Makarov's words made Noah more or less silent. So, there is such a trump card in Fairy Tale, but there was no way for others to know about it. Not to mention other things, just the Lumen Starlight itself was developed with Mavis' body as the center, and the principle of its establishment was because Mavis had been cursed by Anxelam. If this matter was spread out, it would definitely affect the entire Fairy Tale, right? Moreover, this permanent spell was developed with Mavis' body, which was equivalent to a human experiment. If the council knew about this matter, then Fairy Tale would very likely be banned. Not to mention, if Lumen Starlight was really a magic that could defeat even Jerf and Aconorolia, then it would definitely attract the covetous eyes of all kinds of people, making Fairy Tale a target of public criticism all of a sudden. Apart from that, the various secrets related to Lumen Starlight would also cause all kinds of trouble. For example, if the world knew that the founders of Fairy Tale like Mavis, Hades, and Yuri had learned magic from the fiercest dark mage in history, it was not impossible to report Fairy Tale and have the council demote Fairy Tale to a dark guild. So, this was a secret that only the guild leaders of each generation knew about, right? And now, since Makarov had told this important matter to Noah, it could only mean one thing. Grandfather, Noah said with a complicated expression, are you preparing to retire? Because of the magic crystals you left behind, Fairy Tale was given a chance to breathe in these 7 years, which proved that you were far-sighted. Makarov was silent for a while, then sighed. This old man is already old, and my grandson is so outstanding. It is time for me to retire. Noah opened his mouth, but in the end, he did not say anything. Just like what Makarov said, he was already old. If possible, Noah also hoped that Makarov would be able to enjoy his old age in peace and not have to worry about the guild's matters. He would be able to enjoy the happiness of his family at home. As for the guild, it was not like Noah had never been the leader of a guild. Was he afraid that he would not be able to do it? However, Noah did not know how long he would be able to be the guild leader. After all, not long after, Noah would also have to fight against the disasters that threatened the various worlds. At that time, if he succeeded, then it would not matter. If he failed, then Noah would be destroyed by Shadow, along with a myriad of worlds. Since that was the case, then there was no need to be calculative. If he won, then he would return to being the guild leader. If he lost, then he would disappear together. It did not matter how long it would last. Thus, Noah nodded heavily. I understand, Grandpa. The heaviness and vicissitudes of life on Makarov's face finally faded, and he smiled with some relief. Well, you don't have to worry. For the time being, I will stay in this position for a while. When there is a chance, I will announce this matter. While talking, the two finally arrived at the underground. At the end of the stairs, there was a palace that was not too vast. After passing through this palace, a door appeared in front of Noah and Makarov. Boom! With a heavy thud, the door slowly opened. What appeared in front of Noah was a vast basement. The basement was very empty. Only in front of them stood a huge crystal, and in that crystal, a young girl like a fairy was floating inside, naked. Her eyes were closed, and her face was serene. She was like a sleeping beauty, very beautiful. That is Lumen Starlight. Makarov looked up at the crystal and said very solemnly, it symbolizes infinity, the eternal magic that can produce inexhaustible magic, fairy heart. Now, I entrust it to you. Makarov looked at Noah, and his voice was unprecedentedly serious. I hope you can guard it well and use it properly. Noah looked at the girl and the crystal and nodded silently. Chapter 1636. In the basement, a huge crystal shone in the darkness. Inside the crystal, a naked, seductive girl with her eyes closed was suspended in the air. That scene was both beautiful and sacred, causing others to be unable to produce the slightest trace of evil thoughts. After explaining everything, Makarov had already left. Thus, Noah was the only one left in the entire basement. Looking at Mavis floating within the resplendent crystal, he softly muttered, "Fairy heart." It symbolized infinity and was able to unleash eternal magic that would never run out. With this, even if I wanted to have everything, it wouldn't be difficult, right? Why was the third perpetual motion machine called the crystallization of dreams? It was because it could create infinite energy out of nothing. With the third perpetual motion machine, not to mention wealth, it was not impossible to create weapons that could destroy the world. Therefore, the third perpetual motion machine that was abused by malicious people would become a factor that led to the end of humanity, making Azi Dakaha the final trial of humanity. It was the same principle. For this world that had integrated magic into life, magic was an energy source and could be said to be everything. With the ability to use eternal magic that would never run out, it would be easy to get whatever you wanted. However, like the third perpetual motion machine, this perpetual magic was a double-edged sword. If it was used well, it would naturally be able to unleash unimaginable miraculous effects. But if it was not used well, it would definitely be the same as the third perpetual motion machine that led to the end of humanity, becoming a factor that would destroy humanity. The existence that was related to infinity was basically like this, always influencing the direction of the world and humanity. In the world of Demon High School, the infinite dragon god Orpheus, who was above everyone, was like this. In the world where problem children came from another world, the third perpetual motion machine that became a factor of humanity's final trial was like this. In this world, the fairy heart, which symbolized infinity, was the same. Even if Noah had the third perpetual motion machine, didn't he also have the ability to influence the direction of this world and human society? The principle was the same. So, grandfather was right. If this thing was exposed, it would only be a disaster, right? Noah's heart was determined. If that's the case, it's not safe for it to stay here. No one knew that in fairy tale there was such a basement. The entrance had always been sealed. Only Noah and Makarov knew how to enter. Logically speaking, it should be safe for Lumen Starlight to stay here. However, no one could say for sure when it would be found. Rather than that, it is better to keep it by my side. After all, in this world, there is no safer place than staying by Noah's side. Although Noah had left his authority, sovereignty, grace, and even his treasure vault in the space between worlds, Noah's power was enough to deal with all enemies in this world. With the third perpetual motion machine, Noah's magic power, physical strength, and even mental strength had reached an unlimited level. With Noah's inexhaustible magic power like Lumen Starlight, once he used the strengthening magic, even if it could not strengthen his physical strength to the same level as when he had the ability value, it would certainly not be worse than Hercules in the current world in the form of a servant. In addition, Aster had recovered the power that even the Elven King, who was a world elemental, feared. Athena was also the incarnation of the Sword of Salvation. With Noah's power, if used with unlimited divine power, the power was definitely enough to destroy the gods. Therefore, even if the power, sovereignty, grace, and treasury were all left in between the worlds, Noah still had the power to enter the 4-digit ranks in the box. In this world, the power of the sorcerers could not be compared to the Shura gods in the box. At least, in Noah's view, S-level sorcerers like Alusha and Mira were probably at the bottom of the 5-digit ranks. The 10 great sorcerers were probably also in the 5-digit ranks, but there was still a big gap between them and the top 5-digit ranks of the gods. As for Jerf, the most vicious sorcerer in history, it was possible for him to be at the top of the 5-digit ranks, right? In Noah's memory, in this world, the only existence that could reach the 4-digit ranks was the Black Dragon, Econarolia, who destroyed a country in Revelation. That was also the only existence that could pose a threat to the current Noah, right? In that case, Lumen Starlight was in Noah's hands. Was it not safe? In view of this, Noah immediately decided how to deal with Lumen Starlight. Clang! With a flash, a dark gold card appeared in Noah's hand. It was the gift card. Because the Gate of Babylon was left in between worlds, Noah only had 4 items with him. 1. 2 elven magic equipment. 2. A necklace with the effect of flight. 3. A ring that was condensed from the magic book of the Pied Piper of Hamel and was connected to Pest's life. 4. A gift card that could be summoned at will. Without the Gate of Babylon, if one wanted to carry a magic crystal that was taller than a person, one could only use the gift card to store it. The gift card could store gifts. Other than gifts, it could also store food, water, clothes, and other daily necessities. If it's magic, it should be able to be treated as a gift and stored. Noah raised the gift card up high. The dark gold gift card instantly emitted a dazzling light that enveloped the huge magic crystal. The huge magic crystal that sealed the fairy-like beautiful girl immediately turned into a ray of light and was stored into the gift card. Noah smiled with satisfaction and allowed the gift card to disappear into the air. Then, he turned around and left the basement. After 100 years, Mavis' body finally left the dark basement. After leaving the basement, Noah returned to the guild. In the guild, there were still only 3 people, Makarov, and Wakaba. By the way, Noah, I have something to tell you, Makarov immediately said when he saw Noah appear. In the next 2 months, you should work hard on your cultivation and prepare to participate in the Great Demonic Battle Exhibition in 2 months. Great Demonic Battle Exhibition? Noah was slightly startled. What's that? In the years that you weren't around, the Fiori Kingdom had an annual ceremony to determine the guild rankings. Makarov spoke first. That is the real hell. Noah, you must not participate. Hell. Noah was curious. Why do you say that? Because, Wakaba said in a melancholy tone, in the past, when we participated, we were always last place. Is that so? Noah raised an eyebrow. So, in the past, Sabertooth was first place? That's right, Makarov said loudly. This time, we will also participate and become the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom once again. With that, Makeo and Wakaba immediately opened their mouths. Impossible. It's impossible. Ignoring Makarov and Wakaba, Makarov continued. Naz and the others are cultivating because of this matter. They have already been cultivating for a month. In 2 months, the Great Demonic Battle Exhibition will begin. After saying this, Makarov looked at Noah. How is it, Noah? Will you participate? Hearing this, Noah smiled. Of course, although he didn't know what kind of guild Sabertooth was. But in Noah's heart, Fairy Tale would always be #1. If Fairy Tale isn't #1, then I will make it #1. This sentence made Makarov and Wakaba speechless. Makarov laughed out loud. Chapter 16:37. On the sunny mountain path, flocks of birds chirped like a melody, constantly reverberating in the sky. On a mountain path, Noah was walking up step by step, heading towards the summit. Grandpa was talking about this mountain, right? While walking, Noah looked around and smiled with some nostalgia. In the past, I also cultivated in this area, Yi Fuqian said. In order to participate in the Great Magic Battle Exhibition 2 months later, Noah also left the guild and prepared to train for a period of time. Although, in Noah's view, in this world, apart from Econarolia, there should be no one else who could threaten him, but rather than hiding in the guild for 2 months, Noah still chose to come out and train. Of course, The current Noah didn't have to endure hardships for several years like before in order to learn magic. This time, Noah only intended to train his energy control. Ever since I got the third perpetual motion machine spirit, although I have unlimited energy, too much energy has instead caused problems in control. Noah thought silently. If I can control more energy, then the portion that can be used at one time will also increase, right? In the past, because he was worried that too much energy would cause his body to explode, Noah could only forge an energy source to accommodate too much energy. He also didn't dare to use too much energy at one time, which was the so-called problem of exertion. But ever since he got the third perpetual motion machine spirit, Noah's body could hold unlimited energy and could also use unlimited energy, no longer worrying about exertion. In other words, Noah's exertion also became unlimited. However, if the energy used was not controlled well, it would still cause damage to the body, as well as the mysterious runaway. This problem, when he was a child, Noah was troubled by it. Therefore, Noah understood that if he didn't properly train his energy control, even if he had unlimited energy, it would only cause a destructive disaster to the surroundings. When I was a child, my mana went out of control, and I almost destroyed the guild. Noah couldn't help but be speechless. If the current me were to go berserk with the unlimited energy in my body, the entire continent would be destroyed, right? For this reason, Noah needed to retrain his energy control. As long as Noah could control more energy without worrying about the problem of output and consumption, the more energy he could control, the more his strength would increase proportionally. For example, if one could use more mana, the power of magic and spells would increase. Another example was that the more divine power one could use, the more powerful the elven device would be. Now, consumption and exertion were no longer a problem that troubled Noah. The only problem that really troubled Noah was the amount of energy he could use at one time. Fortunately, this problem could be solved with diligence. It would be great if there was a strong enough opponent for me to practice with. Noah thought with regret. It had to be known that Noah, as a human, was also a god slayer. The stronger the opponent, the more he could improve his strength. In the past, Noah had fought many strong people in the box court, including the final trial of Absolute Evil and Closed World, which allowed him to improve a lot. Among them, there was an improvement in his control of energy. Unfortunately, in this world, no one was qualified to be Noah's opponent, except for Aconorolia. Incompetent opponents, no matter how many of them there were, would only be a negligible improvement to Noah. In the end, I can only rely on diligence. Diligence was diligence, but Noah didn't need to be nervous about anything now. With Noah's current strength, it was enough to deal with all the enemies in this world. The reason why he chose to be diligent was because he didn't want to waste these 2 months. And, if possible, of course I want to train with my future wives and spend these 2 months together. Noah raised his head and looked in the direction of the mountain top, an expectant smile unconsciously appearing on his face. Mira and Lysana are there, right? After Noah decided to train, Makarov told Noah the whereabouts of Mira and Lysana. Noah came to this mountain because of this reason. It's just that I didn't expect that they would be training here. With this thought, Noah continued to walk in the direction of the mountaintop. At this time, in the direction of the mountaintop, a violent explosion suddenly shook, causing flames and dust to sweep up at the same time. Noah looked at the sudden explosion on the mountaintop with a surprised expression, then smiled slightly. It seems that they are indeed training hard. Leaving such a sentence, Noah didn't waste any more time. He directly floated up and flew in the direction of the mountaintop. Not long after, Noah arrived at the mountaintop. A violent explosion occurred again, causing waves of fire to shake out like a storm, rushing in all directions. And in the flames, 3 figures were crisscrossing and crisscrossing. Among them, a figure rushed into the sky, directly rushed out of the waves of fire, spread a pair of wings, and flew up. It was a girl wearing revealing tights. Her arms were like the hands of a devil covered in scales, looking very ferocious, a pair of bat-like wings on her back, a tail like a crocodile, and hair straight to the sky. looking very evil. Impressively, it was Mira who used the receiving magic to receive the devil's soul of Satan. At this time, Mira was completely without her usual gentle and considerate appearance, transforming into a terrifying devil. A pitch-black energy light flashed in her hand, converging into the shape of a ball, raised high above her head, and fiercely threw it down. Whoosh! The pitch-black magic light suddenly turned into a meteorite, falling from the sky, carrying a sharp sound of breaking through the air and in the vibration of the atmosphere, violently shot down to the waves of fire below. It's coming. A real man. In the waves of fire, two voices sounded in succession. The two voices belonged to Lysana and Elfman. The three siblings of the Strauss family came to this mountain together and began to cultivate. Like Mira, Lysana and Elfman both used the receiving magic. However, Mira received the soul of a devil, Lysana received the soul of an animal, and Elfman received the soul of a demon. Thus, Lysana received the soul of a cat, wearing a cat-like fur top and bottom, growing cat ears on her head, a cat tail on her back, and a pair of hands turned into cat claws, her figure nimbly leaping away. As for Elfman, he seemed to have received the soul of some kind of demonic creature, and one of his arms became extremely hideous and terrifying like a lizard's arm. He threw a punch at the ball of mana that was shooting towards him. Accompanied by an explosive sound, the pitch-black magic light exploded in front of Elfman's ferocious fist, setting off a shocking impact and flames. In the midst of the explosion, Elfman flew backwards like an arrow from a bow, fiercely smashing into a rock, causing cracks to appear on the rock. One could only imagine how much power Mira had used in that attack. "Brother Elfman," Lysana cried out in shock, then froze on the spot. Mira had appeared behind Lysana at some point and raised her hand, facing Lysana's back, gathering pitch-black magic light in her hand. "Wait. Sister Mira, wait." Lysana hurriedly raised her hand. "We surrender." The magic gathered in Mira's hand slowly dissipated as she sighed with a cold expression. "Really, the two of you. One only knows how to fight force with force and doesn't know how to dodge at all. The other is always distracted by big and small matters. If this continues, in 2 months, you'll be suppressed by others." Ugh. Lysana was speechless. Only Elfman, who was paralyzed in front of the cracked rock, raised his hand weakly. "But, sister, fighting force is what a man is." Mira immediately glared at Elfman, causing Elfman to shudder and shut his mouth. Seeing this scene, Noah couldn't help but laugh out loud. This laughter was immediately heard by Mira, Lysana, and Elfman. Seeing Noah floating in the air, unable to hold back his laughter, the siblings were first startled before they were pleasantly surprised. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.